Welcome. Thank you for being here. To those of those of us in person and those live streaming, and to our community in Catalina, thank you for joining this meeting. We're now going to have the Pledge of Allegiance. I don't see our student rep here yet, so I will ask our student board member, and I'm springing this on her, but I'll ask our student board member to lead us in the pledge. Thank you, Member Nala, for filling in. And now I will ask our board secretary to take roll and establish a quorum.
Student Board Member Nuala?
Here.
Vice President Miller?
Here.
Member Benitez?
Here.
President Craighead?
Here.
Member Otto?
Here.
Member Lopez?
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. The board has been meeting in closed session regarding matters listed on today's agenda. The board took action on the following items. On item 3.1, on a motion made by Member Benitez and seconded by Vice President Miller, the board voted 5-0 to approve the expulsion of student ID number 201116960. The student will be eligible to apply for readmission after January 25th, 2027. On item 3.2, on a motion made by Vice President Miller and seconded by Member Benitez, the board voted 5-0 to place employee number E00643-644 on unpaid administrative leave. On item 3.3, on a motion made by Vice President Miller and seconded by Member Benitez, the board voted 5-0 to approve the terms of the settlement agreements in the workers' compensation claim numbers 22894-039 and 241126548. Next, we are at adoption of the agenda.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Our student board member?
Aye.
So that passes 5-0 with a preferential vote. Let's see, I'm checking. I don't think we have our student representative. So we will move on to recognitions, acknowledgements, and reports. So we have a video, or I seem to be catching everybody off guard, and I'm sorry.
Rambridge is a mentorship program where we select underclassmen that are feeling not that much of a sense of belonging on Millikan or are prone to falling behind. And we take mentors from upperclassmen, juniors, seniors to hold their hand and guide them through what they can do at Millikan.
Liberatory design is the framework that we've been learning about in RSVP. It's like a series of steps. It's a way of thinking about equity problems and creating solutions. We just had our inaugural event, so we're trying to get it going like a weekly club. We got a bunch of volunteers of the upperclassmen, and then we found focus groups for the underclassmen. We just found people and then invited them.
Every meeting they emphasize the prototype and then the notice and reflect portion of the laboratory design process. This is our first event, so we did notice that some areas need improvement, but we hope to apply these areas to our next event and our following events so that we can make this program as successful as we possibly can. These two girls came up to me and they're like, how can we get more info, like these mentees? They're like, how can we get more info about this program? I'm super excited. They just sparked a bit of hope into us, like this program is actually beneficial.
I'm really hoping that it can be a continuing program and that it can get bigger for more and more freshmen. I think it's a great opportunity for the upperclassmen too, to have like a leadership opportunity. I'm really proud that it's student-centered, which I know we talk about co-design, but I still really like that the center of this program is students.
Thank you for that. And this afternoon, we heard from a panel of students, and the one student that was seen at the end of that video, Lydia from Milliken, was here in person, and it was wonderful to hear about what the students are doing at their high schools and how the program RSVP has helped them and how they are spreading that kind of like ripples in a pond. So that was wonderful. So we will move to our student board member report.
Well, 3 Long Beach Unified High School robotics teams advanced to the 2026 First California Southern State Championship. The First Robotics Championship challenges high school students to design, build, and program industrial-sized robots while developing skills in engineering, collaboration, and problem-solving. Top teams for the Southern California Championship may advance into the first championship in Houston later this month. Teams from the California Academy of Mathematics and Science, CAMS, Sato Academy, and Long Beach Polytechnic High School all qualified for championships after ranking among the top 60 of 151 robotics teams across Southern California. CAMS has qualified for the International Championship in Houston, Texas later this month. In addition to that achievement, Gabriel D., an 11th grader from CAMS, was selected as one of the 16 semifinalists for the First Leadership Award, which recognizes exceptional student leadership and contributions to robotics. Then a few acknowledgements. April is Autism Acceptance Month, which evolved from Autism Awareness Month as the autistic community saw acceptance over awareness. It aims to educate and promote inclusivity for individuals on the autism spectrum and neurotypical individuals. The push for acceptance stems from the belief that awareness alone does not equate to acceptance. Personal experiences highlight the importance of understanding and accommodating individual needs within the autism community. In addition to being Autism Awareness and Acceptance Month, April is also Middle Eastern and North African Heritage, History, Cultural, and Civic Awareness Month. In 2017, Congress formally recognized April as National Arab American Heritage Month. However, in an effort to recognize the diversity of our community, with members who draw their heritage from the region and include those who do not speak Arabic, we join these communities that are interested in choosing to recognize the month as the Middle Eastern and North African MENA Cultural Month. Celebrating Americans who are culturally connected to the MENA region helps all in our community better understand their place in the world and our place in it. The MENA region stretches from Morocco to Iran. At least 19 countries make up MENA, but some lists include up to 23. Other countries are often lumped in with the Middle East by current events, such as Afghanistan, Pakistan. Although they may not technically belong to some definitions, it is one of the most linguistically diverse regions, with more than 60 languages being spoken throughout. The 4 most commonly spoken language of the region are Arabic, and the most widely spoken region in many of the MENA countries are Persian or Farsi, spoken in Iran and significant Persian-speaking populations in Afghanistan and the United Arab Emirates. Hebrew, primarily spoken in Israel and the neighboring countries. Aramaic, primarily spoken in North Iraq and Turkey. And Turkish, spoken in Turkey as well as Cyprus. Although diverse in language, culture, religion, and geography, these groups have much in common. Thank you.
Thank you. And I also want to thank you for your participation on that panel earlier today. That was wonderful to hear from you. And next on the agenda, we have public hearing, Resolution 041526-A, increasing statutory school fees imposed on residential and commercial industrial development projects pursuant to Education Code Section 17620 and Government Code Section 65995, the Level 1 fees. Do we have anyone to speak on that item?
No, we don't. We don't have a public speaker for that item.
Seeing that we have no one to speak on that item, I declare the public hearing closed. Next on the agenda, we have public testimony for items listed on the agenda.
Yes, we have 2 speakers for items listed on the agenda. Our first speaker is Jerlene Tatum, followed by Lee Yun Alvarado.
Good evening, Board. Jerlene Tatum speaking on Superintendent search. This past week, I had an opportunity to attend the Sankofa meeting in which the consultants that are doing the superintendent search gave a presentation. Was very disappointed, one, in the presentation. We were shared information from a docu-viewer, not a PowerPoint, not slides, a docu-viewer. Many of us attended the meeting thinking that it would be an opportunity to give input, but instead we were told what had already been gathered, which seemed a bit disjointed, by the way, the survey distribution that went out. And although 2,800 surveys were received, which is amazing compared to past survey outcomes that you all have pushed out, it was still very disappointing to have someone tell us what someone has told them. One of the most disappointing things that came out of it when we began to express ourselves in the lack of engagement that actually had been taking place in the community, not just with Black parents, but overall, was, quote, "We are going to validate you. We are going to validate you." A room full of parents was told by consultants that they were going to validate us, that they were going to validate our voices and our concerns. That there lies the problem with our board and administration, if it is necessary for paid consultants to gather information to validate us. So I came to say today, there would be no Long Beach Unified if there were no parents. Because if there were no parents, there would be no children. And many of you would not have employment or positions of power and title. You exist because I exist. You exist because all the families that have children exist. And we do not need anyone to validate our voices. You should be listening to us regardless of what your consultants say. And aside of that, we hope that whatever data was collected by that consulting firm does not conflict with all the time and energy that the district put in the 2035 plan. Thank you. Oh, one last thing. Was also told that there were 18 Zooms that were going to be taking place to gather information. By the way, Zooms are not outreach either. And it's not listed publicly anywhere. And since these meetings are of groups that exist that should be open to the public, that list of those Zoom meetings need to be listed so public can attend it regardless if they are a member of whatever specialized group or not. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Lee Jung Alvarado. I am the proud parent of 2 students at the elementary school on 3rd Street, proud home of the Sea Lions. I am here to ask the moral question I believe is before the board. Should an LBUSD elementary school remain named after Cesar Chavez, a man with credible allegations against him for sexually assaulting women and children? A man whose living survivors resemble the mamis, tias, and abuelas of the majority of the students at our downtown dual immersion school. It has been very painful to watch school districts throughout the state, including LAUSD, answer this moral question with a resounding absolutely not, while LBUSD hides behind bureaucracy saying only, quote, "The Board of Education has a renaming policy that will be reviewed in the coming days." I think process, policy, and transparency is important, but I believe moral clarity and leadership are also important. Our school community deserves answers and actions, not just platitudes. Survivors are watching. It goes against LBUSD's stated core values of equity and social justice, an environment that fosters connection, respect, and safety. To state that LBUSD stands with these living survivors while at the same time leaving that perpetrator's name on the side of the building, greeting our young students each day. We are watching what you do, not just what you say. No single name could ever hinder the amazing learning and community building we are doing at the home of the Sea Lions. But it is unconscionable for this board to leave us in limbo without a clear statement of intention that the name will ultimately be changed. I ask again, should an LBUSD school remain named after a pedophile? Tonight, you can actually stand with survivors and do something, or you can remain in the tradition of Dr. King's white moderate and once again tell our families at 3rd Street Elementary, wait.
Thank you.
That concludes our speakers for the items on the agenda.
And for items not listed on the agenda,
We have 13 speakers that would take us over the 30-minute time frame.
That assumes that everyone's going to use up the 3 minutes, Madam Chair, so I would
Yeah.
say let's wait to see if we can get through the 13,
Okay.
and then if you'll
Okay.
entertain a motion to extend at that point.
okay. Then let's begin.
Our first speaker is Lindsay Fisk, followed by Laura Gottlieb.
Good evening. My name is Lindsay, and I have been an employee for LBUSD for over 10 years as a speech-language pathologist, or SLP. Over the years, I have grown concerned that the unilateral decisions made by the district do not reflect a true knowledge of what our role as SLPs are in the public school setting. I'd like to take a few moments to share our responsibilities with you. A school-based SLP evaluates students who have speech, language, or communication difficulties. We interpret and present the findings of the assessment by writing legally defensible reports and help determine eligibility of services. SLPs then develop and implement individualized education programs with specific communication goals and provide therapy either one-on-one or in groups during the school day. In addition to direct therapy, SLPs collaborate closely with teachers, parents, and other school staff to support students in the classroom, track progress, and adjust interventions. We provide training for parents and staff on students' various AAC devices so they can carry over newly learned skills into the classroom and at home effectively. Overall, our job is to help students improve communication skills so they can better access the curriculum and participate in school activities. Because our role in schools is so nuanced and constantly changing, it is required that all SLPs working in schools maintain their state licensure. In order to do so, we need to attend conferences to obtain a required amount of continuing education units. These qualifications, in order to remain licensed, ensure that SLPs stay up to date on new assessments and therapy techniques, and that the SLPs hired on by the district provide quality services for the students. In the past, the district provided SLPs with money that could be used toward our continuing education units. We were also allowed time off to attend these conferences. At our first staff meeting this year, our Department of SLPs, without warning, were informed that the allotment of money and time off to attend these conferences would not be continued. Essentially, we were all given a reduction in pay. Moving forward, we would not be able to get reimbursed for our conferences, and we would be required to use our personal necessity days to attend conferences. This is unheard of across districts within the state. Maintaining our licensure is a requirement for our job, and for the district to inform SLPs that they need to use their own personal time to attend these conferences shows a lack of equity when teachers are given professional development days throughout the school year for the same purpose. Because we serve students with a variety of diagnoses and ages, we require the flexibility and autonomy to choose the courses we attend. We ask that you reconsider this poorly thought out, unilateral decision and provide SLPs with what we were receiving prior to the school year to ensure
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Laura Gottlieb, followed by Brian Leyva.
Good afternoon. My name is Laura Gottlieb, and I'm proud to represent the speech language pathologist here at Long Beach Unified School District. It is truly an honor to serve our students with communication needs and help them access their education. At the October board meeting, my colleague Amy Culligan came to share some exciting news. She and I had been selected to present at the American Speech Language Hearing Association's 100th anniversary convention in Washington, D.C. We felt especially honored because in addition to this particular convention being highly selective with its speakers, we were also the first speech-language pathologist from Long Beach Unified to represent our district at a national level. Amy and I have also spoken at the state level, and most recently we presented at the local professional development meeting, providing continuing education to our colleagues. Our work focuses on optimizing assessment and dismissal processes for students in public schools and aligns directly with the district's Vision 2035. It reflects the high-quality practices happening within LBUSD. This is something worth celebrating, right? But here are the concerns, as Lindsay just outlined. To attend and present at this national conference, I had to use 3 personal necessity days. Also, funding for conferences and required continuing education has been eliminated. Like many of my colleagues, we paid entirely out of pocket for travel, registration, and hotels. As a licensed and practicing speech-language pathologist in California, continuing education is not optional. It's required to maintain our licenses and provide the highest level of service to students. Speech-language pathologists are not only service providers. We contribute significantly to this district, not only through student outcomes, but by generating approximately $1 million annually in revenue. So today we respectfully ask, 1, first, that speech-language pathologists not be required to use personal necessity days to attend professional conferences. And secondly, that funding for continuing education and professional development be restored. We're proud of the work that we do and the impact that we have, both in our classrooms and across the district. We ask that LBUSD reinvest in the professionals who make this work possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Brian Leyva, followed by Danielle Urbina.
Good evening, board members. My name is Brian Leyva, and I am a senior at Wilson High School. I am here today because I, along with many other students, am deeply concerned about the decisions to end contracts for a large number of staff at Wilson, including Mr. Dorsey, the counselor of the technology pathway. Right here, I have a petition signed by 444 students at this school. These aren't just names. They are the voices of students who believe it is unjust to lose essential mentors. These are the voices that want a better future for the next generation of students to come. Mr. Dorsey's impact has not gone unnoticed. He is more than just a counselor. He is a lifeline, a father figure, and a light in the fog for those of us who feel lost. In a school as large as ours, it is rare to find an adult who provides this immense level of effort and genuine care. Ever since he stepped foot in a position where he knew was going to be tough, students from all over the school found an adult they could safely run to. To further understand his value, you have to look at where we started. In 2022, the tech pathway was in disarray. It was considered the pathway with the least amount of structure and activities at Wilson, leaving students unsatisfied with the subjects, the coursework, and the support. 2 years later, Mr. Dorsey came in with a lot on his plate and immediately got to work. Because of what he accomplished, our pathway has never looked brighter. Students now feel happy and motivated because for once, this pathway began to shine through building relationships, work-based learning field trips, and being a strong male leader, role model for the pathway that is predominantly young men of color. Releasing him is not the right decision. The time he invested in us should not be wasted. He is an investment not only for Wilson High School, but for the future of Long Beach and for the future of his students. We hear a lot about budget cuts and high administrative salaries, and I understand the board has incredibly difficult choices to make with this budget. But from a student's perspective, it feels like the district is prioritizing spreadsheets over people. When you release someone like Mr. Dorsey, you aren't just adjusting a budget. You are removing a pillar of our support system. When the district is facing cuts, this board seemingly decided to prioritize their own pockets by keeping high salaries and bonuses, while sweeping the future under the carpet of us students. Are we really going to choose a greed over the well-being of the students this district is looking after? It is not just about a person that we love as students. It is about a man who loves his job and he's going to lose it. A job that he is so passionate about. We urge you to deprioritize the salaries at the top and even make cuts there. It will not only save the spot for our beloved counselor, but it would save the teachers who make the district a place where students want to be in. We were told cuts would be made to those at the top, but we haven't seen that yet. Buildings are made of bricks, but schools are made of people like Mr. Dorsey. We as students urge you to choose a high salary, of administration. Urge you not to choose the high salaries of administration over students' well-being. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next we have Daniela Urbina, followed by Katie Field McDonough.
Good evening. My name is Danny Urbina. I'm honored to be able to represent the speech and language pathology team we see over here and in our department. Every day we support students who struggle and communicate to express their needs, access their education, and be understood. This is highly specialized, essential, and directly tied to the student's success across their academics, social, and vocational outcomes. Tonight, I want to highlight two urgent concerns. First, SLPs are now required to use their own personal necessity days, as my colleagues shared, to attend conferences. Unlike other staff, we do not require substitutes, and we make up all our missed student services. This means no additional fiscal impact to the district when we attend these professional learning meetings. Yet we are still expected to use our own limited personal leave to meet professional expectations. Second, funding for conferences and CEUs has been eliminated. This is especially concerning because CEUs are not optional. They are required to maintain our license. Without them, we can't legally practice or conduct medical billing. At the same time, SLPs are major contributors to our district revenue, as my colleagues shared, and how we generated approximately $1 million annually. Public records show that in 2024 through 2025, the district had about $11 million in revenue with $3.5 million surplus carried into the following year, so that makes a total of $17 million available. The cost to fund conferences for SLPs and SLPAs is approximately $75,000. Despite available funds, the support was cut, while other programs such as the Nursing Health Assessment Team continue to be funded through this budget. This creates kind of a disconnect. In addition, SLPs are paying out of pocket for their own therapy materials to carry out their jobs effectively across articulation, expressive and receptive language, pragmatic language, fluency, voice, pragmatics, AAC, and so much more. This can be through games, books, toys of preferred interests, sensory materials. I can go on. But you can see it's to support a wide range of needs on our caseload. These materials are not optional, they're essential, yet they are frequently funded by us, the SLPs. So currently SLPs are being asked to pay out of pocket for therapy materials, use personal leave to meet their license requirements, and absorb the cost of maintaining our professional standards. We're not asking for extra, we're asking for small reinvestment of funds to help what we generate for our team. Specifically, we're asking that SLPs are not required to use personal time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Katie Field McDonough, followed by Kat Tasea.
Good afternoon. I'm here today representing speech language pathologist of Long Beach Unified. Today, I'd like to highlight two areas of inequity impacting our department currently. First, our department lacks equitable lead support. This year, our lead position was reduced from 100% to 50%. So to put that in perspective, 84 nurses have 3 full-time leads. 65 psychologists have 2 full-time leads. Meanwhile, approximately 140 SLPs and SLP assistants are now supported by a single 50% lead position. This is a clear inequity in support for a large and highly specialized department. This has led to growing levels of anxiety and confusion regarding staffing, clear communications, and the feeling that support is there when it's needed. Second, as has already been mentioned, for the first time ever, SLPs are being required to use personal necessity days to attend professional conferences. In my current role as AAC specialist for the district, meaning augmentative systems to support speech, such as the use of iPads or switches, I'm expected to have a very deep understanding of current technologies and implementation strategies to support students and teams across Long Beach. Across our district, approximately 700 students currently rely on these devices in order to express needs, access academic environment and curriculum, and to be understood. So to stay current in my own specialty area this year, I had to use personal days to pay and attend the National ASHA conference in November just to maintain the level of expertise that our AAC students and teams across LBUSD require. While there, I was proud to be able to support 2 of our other LBUSD SLPs, Laura Gottlieb and Amy Colligan, who actually presented their own areas of expertise to other SLPs from all across the country at the DC conference. I would think our district would be very proud to have their own experts presenting at a national conference, but they also had to use personal days to attend. So, overall, we are asking for equitable, sustainable support so that we can continue to meet the growing and complex needs of our students. When SLPs feel respected and supported, we stay, we grow, and students receive consistent, high-quality services. But when support is lacking, turnover increases, and student outcomes suffer. Thank you for your time and your consideration. I think that's my baby.
Thank you.
Next, we have Jamie Valianos, followed by Holly Takashimi.
I think that you forgot me. Yes?
Yes, I did. My apologies. Kat Tasea is next.
Good evening. I also wanted to tell you to celebrate, it is National School Librarians Month. Yet today I come before you to make visible an issue that directly impacts Title I students. In December, the district established and shared library staffing standards with both the board and the public as a commitment to, quote, align staffing with enrollment and Title I status as a weighting factor. After meticulous review of projected school enrollment and the number of classes at each school, it is evident that the school pairings and FTE presented for transfer and assignment for the next year are not aligned with those standards. And it does not follow what was communicated publicly that all schools would receive at least 1 day of library service per week. There will be Title I schools that should receive 0.2 FTE, which is 1 day, yet Bryant, Gompers, Chavez, MacArthur, Mann, and King have been reduced further to 0.1, just 2 days per month. That's a 50% reduction from what was determined to be the minimum. As a result, we now have 11 Title I schools where classrooms will receive approximately 16 library visits per year, and 6 Title I schools receiving only 8 visits per year. That's not a neutral adjustment. Someone has decided which students and sites get less. Additionally, Washington Middle School, with an expected enrollment of just over 800 students, should receive 0.5 FTE, and it is only allocated a 0.2, 1 day a week. What happened to equitable access? Why were the library staffing standards abandoned? Where were other program staffing standards changed? When a system sets standards and then operates outside of them, it creates inconsistency, confusion, and in this case, inequity. Because standards only matter when we follow them. So I ask, what steps will be taken to correct these disparities? And what is the timeline for ensuring that all Title I students, regardless of school site, receive equitable access to library services? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Jamie Villanos, followed by Holly Takashimi.
Good evening, board members. We're going to continue to talk about libraries, and let's be direct. Mid-year, the district changed the library staffing model for next year. At least 6 schools had their librarian days stripped and redistributed to other sites at the end of March. That's not a planning decision. That's a last-minute change from schools that had built their programs, their schedules, and their budgets around those days. The district's own April budget, sent out the day before spring break, stated that library services will continue in more sustainable, site-based models, allowing schools the flexibility to meet the needs of their communities. Flexibility? Schools were given the opportunity, yes, to purchase additional library time using their own site funds. But that paperwork needed to be submitted before March, long before anybody knew their deadlines would be cut off. Their days would be cut off. If the district truly intended for schools to have flexibility, every school needed that information up front. That's how we make an informed decision. We are informed, we weigh the options, and then we make the decision. That didn't happen. That's not a logistics failure. That's an ethical failure. When I was reading that, I just kept thinking, this is ethically unsound, what I am reading. But let's talk about another claim in that same budget that demonstrates scrutiny. The district stated, there are no reductions to school counselors or psychologists. That is also not accurate. Psychologists were reduced, that was put back on. Great job. But there are 30 school counselors on special contract. 15 will be let go. Half gone. I'm doing the math. That 15 will be expected to fill those gaps. Was that reduction specifically excluded because they are special contract? Does special contract not mean anything? They're still people. If that is so, that is a deliberate mischaracterization. We have counselors and librarians who have been on special contract for 5 or more years. They've had no path to permanency, no security, and now no job. Again, that is unconscionable. That's the second time I've heard that word tonight. We've been coming to you every single month with the same concerns. We have watched the board ask the questions to the school district. We have heard the answers. We'll look into that. Those numbers seem wrong. Month after month, nothing changes. Where are those answers? We're not just here to talk. We're here because we care. And when we read that language and we see what is actually happening, it rings hollow. Stop accepting the non-answers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next we have Holly Takashima, and followed by Logan Vallanos-Healy.
Good evening. My name is Holly Takashima, and I'm here to speak against the cuts to library programs in the district. I'm speaking as a Long Beach resident and as the parent of a future LBUSD student. I am also in my final semester of completing my Master of Library and Information Science degree. And in my program, we examined research from the SLIDE project, which was an initiative funded by the Institute of Museum and Library Services. And one of their key takeaways was super clear. Access to a school library and librarian is an equity issue. It is strongly related to race and ethnicity, and it is further exacerbated for students living in extreme poverty. The gap between students in districts with access to a library program and those without continues to widen. And right now, I am heartbroken that LBUSD is widening this equity gap. Speaking as the parent of a toddler, Burbank is our local school. It's down the street. Next year, they will only have a librarian 1 day per week. That means that my son would only visit the library once a month. A child who only visits a library once a month will not develop a love of reading, a meaningful relationship with their librarian, or the information literacy skills necessary for our modern world. These are all things that I want for him and for all the students in our district. The decision to cut library access for students doesn't reflect my values as a parent or as a Long Beach community member. I went to public schools for my entire K-12 education. I wanted my son to attend LBUSD schools. But the decisions that have been made around cuts, which are really decisions around values, is making me reconsider. We measure what we value. I know the district values proficient test scores on standardized tests, as they should, but the data shows that teacher librarians increase student test scores. As a parent and as a human being, I also value things that cannot be measured. Much of what makes for a whole and meaningful life cannot be quantified. And here too, library staff contribute in ways large and small. To take just one example, librarians curate collections and then they help students connect to books in those collections. They help them find ones that are mirrors, that reflect back familiar experiences and feelings, showing them that they are not alone. And they help them find window books that give them new and different perspectives, building empathy and understanding. They provide the context in which reading helps them make sense of themselves, of others, and the world around them. I know the deficit is real and that cuts have to be made, but I'm asking the board to take a different approach, one that will ensure true equity for the students of Long Beach by reinstating meaningful access to their school library programs. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Next, we have Logan Vallanos Healy, followed by Rudy Kraus.
Good evening. My name is Logan, and I am a volunteer at John Muir Academy. I want to talk about the music classroom on campus. Right now, there are students who physically cannot get into that room. There is no ramp, no accessible entry. Kids who use wheelchairs or have mobility challenges are simply locked out of this class. This has been brought to the administration's attention. I want to read something from this district's own equity policy. It says, LBUSD commits to, quote, a standard of humanity, compassion, sensitivity, and respect as related to accessibility, and that the district's work includes identifying and dismantling practices that are exclusive for specific individuals or groups of students. The district's bond site lists equitable access to school facilities for all students as the stated priority. A classroom with no ramp is exclusive by definition. There is no gray area there. I also want to be fair. I'm not standing here saying the district knew about this and ignored it. This is a school level issue that hasn't made its way up yet. That's actually why I'm here tonight. This is how it gets on your radar. This is one school, one classroom, one fix. LBUSD says its mission is empowering leaders to uplift every student every day. Every student means every student, including the ones who right now can't get through the music room door. All I'm asking tonight is that this board take one concrete ramp forward, direct access to someone to assess what it takes to make the classroom accessible, and to come back with a plan. I've got half a mind myself to grab my bag of tools and create just a solution for those kids out there. Students want to go to music class. I know this district cannot afford to pay out settlements for noncompliance, and I also know you can't talk about those. A far cheaper option would be a comprehensive safety audit of the schools. It is a shame that people like me are the ones that have to speak up because no one will. There are plenty of older and more experienced people that I'm sure you'd rather hear from. Unfortunately, teachers all over this district are afraid to speak up, some because they are on special contract, and others because they fear retaliation and being excluded from opportunities. Now, I spoke earlier about libraries last month and the time before that, and I think I'm gonna be here to raise issues like this, because I feel like that's what this board is missing, is real input, real validation from the parents that are part of this district, because parents do make up this district. And I'm gonna take my 20 seconds left, and I'm not gonna stop talking. So I would implore everybody, parents, teachers here alike, to talk to your students, Talk about what it takes to get involved in local politics to make sure your voice is heard. I mean, you have seniors coming in now. I wouldn't be surprised if underclassmen start showing up too. Thank you guys for your time listening. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Next, we have Rudy Kraus, followed by Jerlene Tatum.
Hi, my name is Rudy Kraus. I'm going to be talking about Islam as it's related to education. You guys teach the equity. Muslims do not believe in equity. They believe that they're superior. They believe in convert or die. Everyone that does not believe in Islam is an infidel, and they're to be killed. You guys are putting false ideas in the minds of children. You have them down on rugs praying, saying that Islam is compatible. It is not compatible. They do not assimilate. You need to tell them the truth. We have a massive Muslim problem in the United States. There's 30 million Muslims. They're taken over with their political caliphate, like in New York with Mandami. There's over 1 million Muslims there. They allow prayer where in Times Square. And this is every day. They're sounding the call to prayer in Minnesota 5 times a day. That's what's going to happen here in the United States. They're following the same thing that's happening in Europe. They've raped all of Europe. If you're not geopolitically aware of what's going on, this is the greatest crime of the mind ever perpetrated in the history of the world is Islam. These are false beliefs. These are delusions of grandeur. This is religious schizophrenia that you guys are sticking up for. Now you can say Muslims, Islam, or Judaism, same thing. They both bought off each other's Bible. That's how Muhammad created Islam when he went to Medina and learned from the Hebrews, and then he came back with Mecca and the Muslim religion. So what are we going to do to stop Islam and the invasion in the United States becoming the U.S. of Islam? We use religious psychological quality control. How do we do this? I'm the first in the world to say, this is historic. We set up congressional hearings for the Muslim ideology trials in Congress, where the imams have to come into Congress and answer congressional scrutiny. What they believe as documented in the Quran that you guys are teaching. Convert or die. Pedophilia. We pit that against the Diagnostic Statistics Manual for Mental Disorders, convert or die, homicidal ideations. This will end Islam in the United States.
Your time is up. Thank you.
Whoever laughed is ignorant.
We have reached the 30-minute mark.
And how many more speakers do we have?
3 more.
We have 3 more.
Move to extend time for the 3 speakers.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? And our student board member?
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. That passes 5-0 with a preferential vote. We'll extend time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jerlene Tatum, followed by Nicole Garda.
Assalamu alaikum.
Which means peace be upon you. That is how Muslims greet each other when they meet each other, and it's followed with wa alaikum salam. Thank you, baby. Board members, what happened to the Black Student Symposium? It seems that no one can answer the question. A signature event that is supposed to support Black students' success, and not a word from anyone. Do you know Board Member Craighead? How about you, Board Member Vice Board Chair Miller? Do you know what happened to the Black Student Symposium? Last year, myself and other parents came before you multiple times. We met with management staff. We sent several dozen emails about our discontent and concern with Norma Spencer, the director of the Black Student Success Center. We even sat in multiple meetings with Spencer that turned out to be nothing but a waste of time. I came before you, talked about a job description, which I was told was not a job description. Why am I here again? In February, the Sankofa meeting, 19 people, 6 parent guardians, 6 staff members of the Black Center, from the Black Center, 3 guests from Cal State Long Beach, 2 district staff, including Deputy Superintendent Brown and Chief Academic Officer Makovitz, 1 board member, Maria Lopez, and 1 LBUSD staff member. In March, we had 2 guests, about 11 staff members, and maybe about 10 parents. In April, which just passed, we had about 30 attendees. About 1/3 were staff educators, and the rest were parents that parents made sure were there. Part of the role of the director of the center of the job description, this is not the job description, it said that they would connect and engage with Black parents and caregivers. There's proof that that has not happened. And here we are going in the 3rd year of a staff member that's making, over $150,000? And they have basically destroyed a program which was moving forward. This year, we should have been celebrating our 5th year symposium. November 5th, Board Member Miller said, "I think it is important that we are transparent and accountable for what I will consider our underperformance of community outreach." Well, I'm asking for that accountability right now. Because according to Parent Village and the Black Center, parents and children are at the center of it. Well, there's no student success without parent engagement. And if no one is outreaching to us and communicating with us or putting an effort, every single time you get up there and you talk about your guardrails and your goals and Black students, all you're doing is flapping your jaws. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Nicole Garda, followed by the last speaker, Leah Laras.
Hi. I hadn't planned to speak tonight, but when a student from my school who just spoke with you, Brian Leva, approached me for feedback on his speech and worries that he couldn't coordinate rides for many students who wanted to come, I wanted to use my own ability to drive here to give them a voice. So I'm here to address the announced reduction of staff in LBUSD, specifically as it relates to my tech pathway students at Wilson High School. I have been teaching since 2002, and in that time, I have never worked with a counselor like Mr. Daniel Dorsey, the technology pathway counselor at Wilson High School. I honestly do not even know where to begin, but I will start by asserting that losing him at Wilson will have a massive detrimental impact on a population that is already quite vulnerable at a particularly difficult time. These are words they shared with me when I asked them to write a journal about any problem that they were struggling with in their own lives as preparation for our 10th grade problem solution essay in my English class. Mr. Dorsey has contributed his blood, sweat, and tears to assisting students in need of guidance. I've seen him talk to students in absolute distress, and they would leave his office looking completely fine and uplifted. If he didn't save me from making bad decisions, I wouldn't even be writing about him. But he's the smartest person I know. He's the reason why I'm here, and I owe him for it. When I got my treasured necklace that my grandma gifted to me stolen, he made sure I was safe. When I was stressing about my grade, he assured me I'd be fine and inspired me to work harder. When I cried because my dad wouldn't let me change classes, he helped me convince him, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. Think about the thousands of students he's probably helped and how many more need a mentor. That is why Mr. Dorsey deserves to stay. However, the last thing that LBUSD should do is fire our teachers and counselors because they are key to solving these problems. This is a second student. For example, a counselor named Mr. Dorsey helped me move into Long Beach at Wilson High School. When he heard about my story, I was schoolless for longer than 2 months because no school wanted to take me in because it was too far into the year and the other schools wanted me to wait until next year. But Mr. Dorsey helped me get the right education that I needed and helped me pick the classes that were right for me. He always shows he believes in me and he always makes me feel better about myself. He has even helped me get through my life struggles, and he even gives me advice about the stuff that I ask him about. He pushes me and he helps me thrive, and he helps me to fix my grades or to do my work when I don't do them or when I slip a little. And then this is a third student. Mr. Dorsey is worth keeping because he makes new students and his other students feel welcomed and engaged in the school because of how great a guy he is, being friendly. Furthermore, Mr. Dorsey can also help with grades. For example, ever since my friend switched from LPS to the tech pathway, he went from a slacking student to a passing student within 1 semester. Furthermore, from my personal experience and my cousin's experience, we both talked to Mr. Dorsey in case we needed to talk about a personal problem, since both of us didn't trust anyone to talk to because we would think it would be used against us. Well, at least me, but we eventually found out that we both have similar problems, and because of that, Mr. Dorsey made me and my cousin's relationship with each other quite strong and close. I mean, I could go on and on. This is an African-American leader in our schools, and he needs, I'm afraid that the more we talk about him, you're gonna take him from us. We need him at Wilson. Please let him stay. He's changed my life, and he's changed our students' lives.
Thank you.
Our last speaker is Leah Lattis.
Good evening. My name is Leah Lattis, and for the last 21 years, I have been the librarian at Wilson High School. I have taught in this district. I'm a product of this district, and I'm very proud to say that tonight I am here to support my colleagues, my students, and my profession. Happy National School Library Month. I actually was going to share some thoughts with you, but one of my colleagues already covered that. So I wanted to bring something to your attention that you may or may not be aware of. In the last probably couple of months, it came out in the newspaper that one of our biggest strengths in the community, Long Beach City College, decided for the first time in its history to offer a bachelor's degree. They have never done this before. And what are they offering the degree in? Library science. So that completely puzzles me why they have done all their research and determined that digital literacy and this role is so critical to our society and to our sites, and yet our partner in our stream of academics, we are now discontinuing and minimizing and just eliminating some of those positions at our district level. So it just leaves me puzzled why we would be making these cuts, yet at the city college level, they have determined that they are so imperative that they must establish this bachelor's degree. So I will leave you with that thought, that question, and hopefully we can continue to partner with them. Hopefully we will be around to do that. And I would just like you to consider that in case you didn't know. Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes our speakers for tonight.
Thank you. And next on the agenda, we have reports on superintendent advisory groups. We'll start with 14.1, Business, Budget, and Policy Development. Dr. Benitez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just 2 quick items from me. We had a brief discussion today about setting up a discussion to move forward on one of the concepts from Student Outcomes Focused Governance, which is a policy diet. So we're in the process of coordinating possibly a June initial discussion to move forward on that part of our Student Outcomes Focused Governance. So more information to come on a policy diet discussion. And then the only other item is wanted to highlight that we do have a policy for naming of schools for discussion tonight.
Thank you. Next, we have instruction and student learning supports. Member Lopez.
Yes, LBUSD has taken proactive and intentional steps to support students and families impacted by recent changes in immigration enforcement policies. These efforts began shortly after the policies were implemented and have continued throughout the year. In February, the district's social work team participated in a Know Your Rights training facilitated by Orale, who equipped them with the critical information to support and empower families. All school psychologists also attended a professional development session titled Standing in Solidarity with Our Immigrant Students and Families, which focused on different district policy and its available community resources and effective strategies for supporting students in crises. In March, nearly 300 counselors, social workers, and school psychologists received a comprehensive overview of district policy, staff expectations, and coordinated approaches to supporting students and families. And finally, in August, the pupil personnel services staff engaged in additional training centered on updated board policies, along with enhanced strategies and resources to continue supporting impacted students. Through these ongoing efforts, LBUSD remains steadfast in its commitment to ensuring that every student, regardless of background, feels safe, supported, and able to fully engage in their education. Thank you.
Thank you. And item 14.3, workforce development.
No report tonight.
Thank you. And that brings us to the consent calendar.
Move for approval.
Second.
And do we have discussion on the consent calendar? Dr. Benitez?
Just wanted to highlight from item 15.6, our business department report. We had a very large gift, it's item 24, from the Sari Family Trust for $700,000 for scholarship for Millikan female athletes. So just wanted to express gratitude for the support for our students.
I do have a couple of questions. On item 15.1, approval of minutes. Item 16.6, where I voted no on the layoffs. Would you kindly include the rationale that I gave for my no vote? And that was that my vote reflected that all layoffs could have been avoidable had different physical priorities been made. So if you can add that to that item. Also on 15.8, we're proposing amendments to 22 existing contracts to extend the period of performance through December 31st, 2028, and to increase the amount for 11 of these agreements with adjustments ranging from $100,000 to $600,000. I think for the public and just for clarity, would you kindly clarify when the work under these contracts was originally expected to be completed? And also, can you elaborate on the transfer of all terms and conditions from the agreements with Richard Heath and Associates to Resource Innovations?
So with regard to the master services agreements that you are speaking of, the 22 plus, and those have, some of them do have increases to their capacity amounts. There's not a specific timeline assigned to them in terms of projects, because what these master service agreements do, they explain the services of the consultants that provide these services for our projects, but we don't actually have projects under the master services agreement. What happens is, with our master services agreement and the capacity that we have, we can then, as needed, issue out our request for proposals, and then we review those proposals that we receive for the project, and then we make our selection, and then we issue a task order that draws off of the capacity from the master agreement. So that's why some of these we increase the capacity, because they've provided us services on various projects. So I can't give you like a timeline, because they could be various projects that they've been assigned to. Does that make sense?
Somewhat. It's being extended. You're asking to extend it to
so
December of 2028.
Correct. So as I had mentioned in the memo, these master agreements were originally approved in early 2024 with a 3-year time frame. So some of those are coming up on their end date here in 2026. So we want to bring them all to the same end date of adding additional 2 years to 2028. So I thought it would just be easier to bring them all at one time, so that I don't have to come back, multiple times on different board agendas.
Okay. Now it makes more sense. Thank you.
Sure.
I don't know if this one's for you, but 15.9, if you can elaborate on resolution number 041526A, increasing statutory school fees imposed on residential and commercial industrial development projects. Can you clarify those key points?
If you don't mind, I'd like to bring up my colleague, because I had her specifically work on this one. So if you wouldn't mind, Dana, coming up to talk about our developer fees. Sure. Thank you.
Good evening. So every 2 years, the state of California looks at the developer fees, statutory fees, and those are approved by the State Allocation Board in January. It ends up being every even year, 2026. They did roughly about a 4% increase across. We then need to do a fee justification study. We still fall within the level 1 fees for collection of developer fees that occurs. That's the very baseline that we can collect, and the fees reflect what our justification is. So it's about 50 cents to 20 cents, depending on, and no upgrade to the senior housing for developer fees.
And I want to revisit the request about the minutes and check with our legal counsel on that. Is it a standard practice to include more information on a vote that's been taken?
It's typically not. With the new system that we're using, it indicates the votes themselves.
But the other minutes have included my rationale, so I was asking if you could include the rationale this way to be consistent with what we have been doing.
I'm not aware. I don't know any specific examples that you're referring to.
Well, I've voted no more than once, and in the minutes it has reflected. I give a rationale when I vote no, and yes, it is in video, but I also like it reflected in the minutes, and it has been in the past. So I am just asking that it is reflected in the minutes again.
It hasn't been since we switched to the diligent system.
I will double check, but I'm pretty sure it has.
So would it be a reasonable expectation that we don't include it going forward because we're dealing with a newer, a different system that we had been using from before?
That's my understanding of our practice going forward. At this point, that's my understanding of the practice.
Okay, thank you. Is there any further discussion on the consent calendar? I'll ask our board secretary to take a roll call vote.
Student Member Noala?
Aye.
Vice President Miller?
Aye.
Member Benitez?
Aye.
President Craighead?
Aye.
Member Otto?
Aye.
Member Lopez?
I, with the exception of 15.1.
Thank you. Next, we have consent calendar B, item 16.1.
Approval.
Second.
Discussion?
No, I'm going to recuse myself from 16.1.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? And our student board member?
Aye.
So that passes 4-0 with one abstention and a preferential vote. Item number 17 on the agenda, staff report, we have none. New business, item 18.1, superintendent of schools search process. And I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Benitez.
Sure, just real quick. This week we're the search firm that we hired to conduct the process for our superintendent searches in the middle of community engagement input. One of the things that we're going to follow up with them on, and as a representative from our subcommittee that President Craighead and I are on, is that the survey that was deployed and closed be reopened for another week. And it would close on Friday, April 24th. So we'll make sure and get communication out to our communities that we're reopening the survey tool. Encourage all of our community members to participate in that survey around what we're looking for in the new superintendent search. And then I've also been asked by our board to follow up with the superintendent search firm on next steps for the superintendent search. So I'm hopeful provide an update between now and our next meeting regarding superintendent search. I think I covered everything, Mr. Rail.
Thank you. And next up on the agenda, we have the acceptance of monitoring reports for board interim goals 4A and 4B. And I will hand it over to Dr. Baker.
Thank you. As we have made standard practice, I will be joined by members of our team to participate in the monitoring report. And we're also trying to incorporate some of the feedback from you all in terms of our presentation. So we'll be talking about 4A and 4B overall as two different monitoring reports that are about Goal 4. And this is actually the third time that we have been in the monitoring process for Goal 4. So following September, January, and now April. So tonight we'll take a look at two interim goals. One, 4A, that is by June 2028, 85% of 9th through 12th grade Black African American students will receive a C or better in their English language arts A through G course, up from 77% in June 2023. And the other interim goal by June, 4B, by June 2028, 62% of 11th grade Black African American students will be on track to complete A through G requirements, up from 34% in June 2023. So I'm not going to actually recite the reports as they are. They've been made public, and I know that you have studied them, and we have a number of questions that have come. In fact, we're going to focus on 5 areas tonight, addressing them together. 5 areas being consistency of equitable grading practices, the broader implementation of breakthrough success communities, BTSC, as is the language used in the reports, use of during the day credit recovery classes as intervention, our improved monitoring and communication with California College Guidance Initiative, referred to as CCGI, and use of content-specific instructional look-for tools. Part of what we are absolutely trying to embrace is being a learning team alongside you all. And tonight's reports represent continuing to be in learning. In fact, some of the questions that you asked as monitoring questions that were submitted were also about learning and helping us to spur our own curiosity and to be close to the work at schools and others to really learn what is having a positive impact, in particular on our Black African American students, as well as others. So we will address the questions in that way. We also have provided, and Ms. Avila, did you already provide the board? You have a small set of slides. These are slides that support your questions. And so actually another thing that we're testing out in our learning tonight is adding some dimensions of data that are specific to the reports, but that don't actually come in the monitoring reports. So you're actually going to see some images that we pulled together to illustrate a couple of things that are in the reports, as well as a couple of data sets that give you more depth maybe to what the report represents by itself. So with that in mind, we're going to kick off the questions, and I think Mr. Moskovitz, are you going to?
I will get us started, yes. So as Dr. Baker mentioned, one of the things that we're really proud of, I think, as a district is that we really pride ourselves on being a learning organization, that we're continuing to look at research, learn from other organizations, learn from other districts, what are practices that are working in other places that we can bring to Long Beach. And so one of those, as part of that process, Dr. Madrigal and I this year have been engaging with district leaders, district teachers, TOSAs, counselors, and others in trying to better understand what are some of the root causes of the data that we have. And we've specifically started with board goal 1 and 4. So we brought teams together that had expertise in those areas. As it relates to board goal 4, which is obviously the focus for tonight, the team, we engage in what we call a causal system analysis. Think of it as a root cause analysis. The difference is, in a system like ours, when you think about something around A through G completion, it is not a simple solution, and it's not a simple problem, and it's not a simple solution that we're going to find. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of departments, a lot of different people, a lot of different schools. So a causal system analysis is a process that allows you to look at things in a more interrelated aspect. How do these various causes interrelate with one another? And what are the greatest causes of the other things that we're experiencing? And as part of that work, we identified within board goal 4, our team identified really 2 pathways. One, that we need to do a better job of monitoring student progress with A through G implementation. You'll hear us talk about that tonight. And the other is that we need to improve the implementation of our equitable grading practices that we started a couple of years ago through the board policy. So those were the two that we really identified through this causal analysis, maybe had the greatest impact on other things going on within Goal 4. And actually, your questions that you submitted were really centered around some of those as well. So there's going to be four things we're going to talk, or 4 areas two big areas: A through G implementation that Mr. Samuels will speak to, and then some of the implementation of support for grading practices that I'm going to speak to right now. One of the areas that was referenced in the reports and that came in the questions was a little bit around our breakthrough success communities, or BTSC. We've talked about this before. I think we've had presentations before about BTSC. What's on the screen now and you have in front of you is just a little bit more of a description of the components of breakthrough success communities. This is an example of being a learning organization and learning from the other places. So as you know, we are a partnership with core districts, and part of what core districts has brought into districts that it supports is the breakthrough success communities, a research-based approach that is grounded in these 5 drivers. Oh, did you want to start with that? Or? Okay. That's grounded in these 5 drivers. So I'll just quickly kind of run through them. These are things that are in practice right now at all of our comprehensive high schools have been implementing BTSC, as is 3 of our thematic. So Avalon was not thematic. Avalon is K-12, Browning, and Renaissance. So there are these 5 key drivers. There's adult collaboration. So it's bringing adult teams together to think about how do we bring teachers and staff together to really work more closely together around the outcomes we're trying to achieve. And actually, you heard some of that from our students today, how they're working with adults, but it's improving the adult collaboration as well. In support of, for all of these breakthrough success community initiative drivers, we're really focused on the 9th grade outcomes. And that's because the research shows that if 9th grade students, if we can get them on track, they will graduate A through G eligible. 9th grade is really that key year from a global perspective. And so part of that, then the next driver is that supportive transition. How do we make sure, and you heard about the RAM ambassadors and the bridge that they do, we have Link Crew, but how do we make sure that that transition from 8th to 9th grade is most effective? Developmental relationships, how do we improve relationships between adults and students? Student-centered scheduling around master schedule. And one of the key drivers of the BTSC work is the equitable grading, which obviously the work of the board and the work that we've been engaged in these last couple of years is a big part of that. One of the things that's really interesting, if you look at the report, I'm looking at interim goal 4A now. So if you can look at that on your report, you'll see that figure 1 talks about, it references the percent of Black, African American, and all other students who received a grade of C or better in all English courses, grades 9-12. And so you see in 25-26, 82% of our Black students passed their English courses in grades 9-12 with a grade of A, B, or C, 87% of all other students. And then in figure 2, you see that that gap is 5%. If you look down in figure 3, it breaks it down by grade level. But figure 3's grade level breakdown only shows for 25-26. What I'm going to show you here is another data point that supports the work we've been doing. We believe this is firmly grounded in the BTSC work. So if you see this data point, it's up on the screen, you have it in front of you as well. Last year, semester 1, and just as 9th grade, because BTSC is grounded in the 9th grade work. Last year, semester 1, 77% of our Black students had passed 9th grade English with an A, B, or C. This year, it's 83%. Last year, all other students had passed 9th grade English with an A, B, or C at an 83% rate. This year, it's 86%. All students going up, but actually gap closure here. The rate of increase for our Black students doubled the rate of all other students in 9th grade. And that doesn't show up in this report, but as we were continuing to answer the questions that we received, we did a deeper dive into our data and found this, that we do attribute to the BTSC work. One of the questions was, well, why don't we, if this is working, why don't we do it in 10th grade and 11th grade and 12th grade? Good question. I mean, that is something we ultimately want to achieve. But we also, because that 9th grade year is so critical, we're only in our first few years of even implementation of the BTSC approach. We want to get this done with deeper fidelity across our system, really ground all of our schools and all of our teachers, all of our administrators in the practices, and then start to say, and which of those practices would make sense to continue up? Because if we go back to some of these key drivers, equitable grading, that's happening in all of our secondary schools. So that's not just a BTSC approach. Some of the student-centered scheduling we're looking at. So it's really more of the hyper focus around the adult collaboration. There's some very unique structures happening in BTSE that does come with additional funding, additional staffing. That is difficult, obviously, in our current fiscal climate to increase that more readily. But we are looking at which of those practices are currently and should continue up in other grades. But we think this is pretty telling that in now our about a third or fourth year of really deeper implementation of BTSE, where it's growing each year, the number of schools, the number of pathways that are impacted are growing, and we're seeing a pretty significant increase in gap closure for our ninth grade students. So that was one of the questions that came up that I thought would be important. Another one I just want to spend a quick moment on is related to our overall implementation of grading practices. You've heard a couple of different reports over time. Obviously, you were, as a board, highly involved in the grading policy that we started, the equitable grading policy. And then since then, we've come and shared some updates related to our implementation. One of the things I think is very important related to our grading practices is that we do see it as another opportunity for us to be a learning organization. The concept of equitable grading came in because of our learning from other organizations and the research that was out there, including what you saw from the Breakthrough Success Communities research. We are continuing to deepen the expectations and create more consistent expectations and the implementation of those expectations with principals, with administrators, with counselors, department heads, teachers. We also are continuing to engage, even just, it's happening as we speak. We're engaging with folks out in the field to find out how are they experiencing the equitable grading. Teachers are we have focus groups that are continuing to convene to give us feedback on how's it going and what changes might need to happen to the guidelines. We have our teacher council, which is made up of teachers from every school. Both our middle school teacher council and our high school teacher council have been meeting with district team members around what do they think needs to be improved around the equitable grading practices. So it's something that we're proud of, the implementation, and it's something we're continuing to refine and deepen the consistency in the implementation, as came out through our causal analysis. But again, just one quick data point that I think is compelling. While we are continuing to work through some of the voices that we're hearing, some of the experiences that our students are having, that our teachers are having around equitable grading, it's by and large, it's actually had a pretty effective overall implementation. We're finding more consistency in grading through core districts, as we referenced. They provide us with data reports that show us, that demonstrate the consistency in grading across our district. And we're finding that over the last 2 years, the consistency of grading across our district is getting more, I can't say consistency more consistent, but yeah, there's a narrowing of the variation in grading. So there's a more consistent approach that's demonstrated by these graphs that they show us. But this is a point that I think is important as well. There have been, we've heard from teachers that question whether we would have some steep grade inflation by changing to this policy and to these practices. We haven't seen grade inflation in that way, but we have seen very small gradual improvements in ABC rates. So what you see here is all ABC rates, all grades last year in grades 6 through 12, semester 1. If you look at the in size there, it's like 174,000. And that's because it's every one of our students in secondary school for every course that they're taking and the grade they're receiving in that. So think of 25, 30,000 kids times 6 or 7 or 8 courses. That's where you get that huge in size. But last year, semester 1, we had 85% of our students receiving A, B, and C rates across those. We're at 86% now. The prior year, before we implemented the policy and the practices, it was 84%. So we're not seeing this dramatic inflation, but we are seeing what we expect to see, which is students having greater opportunities to demonstrate their progress and their mastery. And so and that 86% right now in semester 1, think about the long-term implication of that on things like A through G eligibility. Because when more of our students are receiving an A, B, or C in their core classes, that is going, over time, that is going to translate into increased A through G eligibility. It may not show up in one semester or 1 year, but think about, again, 9th grade students, gap closure, more students passing classes. What will that look like as we continue on this trajectory through their high school years? So let me just pause there and see if you have any questions about either of those areas before I hand off to Mr. Samuels.
Quick question on the previous slide, Brian, that one. Was there a methodological reason on semester one, or just practical because we just got back the data from semester one?
Exactly that.
Okay.
Yeah, these reports that we're looking at, interim, goal 4A and 4B, are all based on semester one grades.
Got it.
And so we wanted to keep that methodology into the conversation here.
Thank you.
But it is important, and actually I'll go back one more so Dr.
Yeah, I was
Baker
gonna
can jump,
say-
because really the goal itself that we're talking about is semester
nice.
two.
That's right.
Right.
Yes.
That's right.
So the
That's right.
additional image that we provided in the slide deck, it's page 2. If you'll look at page 169, interim goal 4B, when we step back at the goal level and you look at figure 1, you don't see the same degrees of progress as when we step back and view that from a larger lens to board goal 4. So the image that is there is a reminder that even last year, so if you look at 24-25, the 11th grade data looked the way it looked. If you'll move to the slides and see the progress that was made when you step back and think of it just from the entire board goal. So again, the micro details sometimes, and this is what our learning comes from, how much predictability does one interim goal give? And even in our reporting, should we always bring back the board goal itself rather than just looking down way in the details and making a lot of either assumptions or decisions? And so tonight's an opportunity for us to test that out. Just to be really specific, 24-25 at this looking figure 1% of Black African American and all other students on track to complete A through G requirements by semester 1, grade 11, 36% compared to 48%. And then if you tune to the slide deck, you see that the outcome of that was 53% of Black African American students by grade 12 meeting A through G. Similarly, if you look in the slide deck to figure 2, you actually see gap closing, not gap increasing. I guess all of it to say, it's more complex than one report. And so part of our learning is how to bring different dimensions that give a perspective about the goal itself and not over represent progress or lack of progress on one report.
If I could build on that, Dr. Baker, on Monday we had our implementation team meeting related to SOFG. Our coach, Greg Klein, was with us, and Mr. Miller and Ms. Craighead, you were part of that. And one of the things that Mr. Klein reminded us was that it's not necessarily looking at each interim goal report and saying, did we meet that interim goal report? The question that you are asking us, and we need to ask ourselves and throughout our system is, are we on track? Do we believe we are on track based on all of the data towards the goal itself? And I think what Dr. Baker was just sharing was that while the interims may not look compelling in the way you see them, the trajectory where we were last year around these interims towards the trajectory where we're at for the overall goal is still positive. That we are on, the data is improved from last year on the interims, and we believe it will continue to translate like it did last year into improvement in the actual goal itself.
That's helpful, Brian. In the spirit of the questions that I submitted, I think draw on that, and it's more wonderings like, if we're not seeing what we're hoping to see, why is it at certain grade levels? And then when we are, like you just pointed to, grade 9 first semester, what tell us more about that.
And I think in a moment when Mr. Samuels joins, I think he'll be able to share some examples of what they're working on with principal supervisors, with principals, to try to get a better sense of what's happening in certain places that we want to continue, what's happening at certain grade levels, what's happening in certain schools that we want to learn from and continue to lift up.
Just really quickly, because I know that we're all kind of chomping at the bit to ask our questions, one of the things that I wanted to just reiterate with my role in regards to the efficiency of our questions is, or the efficiency of our SOFG process, is making sure that, one, that we're asking a question, two, I took notes, is making sure that we're asking more focused questions, and making sure that we're adding a timed undertone of the expectation. And so I know that we're all getting close to the portion where we're going to start asking our questions, so I just wanted to make sure that I reiterated that before we get there.
Mr. Klein would really appreciate that you gave that coaching tip right there.
Yeah, before we move on, I do have a question. I know, but before we move on, do you want me to wait?
He's not talking, he's not keeping track of this time. It's only when you start the question.
Yeah, it's only when we start the questioning portion. Juan is picking fun. He's good.
Mrs. Craig, you have a question.
So you addressed the question about the BTSC and why it's being implemented at the 9th grade level, and I understand that we're aiming to get on more solid footing before we move it to other grades. But according to the analysis, the 10th graders need more help. So are there other resources that can be used for the 10th graders specifically because they seem to need more help?
Yeah, and I think when Mr. Samuels, I'm not putting too much pressure on him to answer everything that you're asking, but I do think that as we get into 10th grade and beyond, what we're really talking about is better monitoring and support for students who are starting to fall off track. Our theory, if you will, our theory of action is let's get the 9th graders on track so we don't have to chase off track situations later on. That is the theory around BTSC. Let's get the 9th graders on track. And when 10th graders are off track, and we see in our data we have a fair number that are, then what are we going to do about it? You'll hear some of the ways that we're both monitoring and providing some intervention to support that.
One note about BTSC, Breakthrough Success Communities, is these practices are often found in other classrooms beyond 9th grade. It's the combination of these 5 key drivers together that are called Breakthrough Success Community work. Every teacher has access to doing these things. Many of our teachers beyond the Breakthrough Success Community are engaged in this kind of work, but specialized to bring it all together in 9th grade, which is often referred to as the make or break year.
All right, so if our calls, oh, one more, Ms. Brown? Yes, please.
Get my questions in, and so I've got a couple, I think, simple questions that may help people besides us who are getting so involved in this. The first one was, please explain the ELA walkthrough tool and how it's used.
We will get to that as soon as Mr. Samuels is done. Dr. Myers-Miller will share, because that was one of the questions we received, so she'll be able to share more about that.
Okay, and the other one on 4A was, under next steps, the recommendation is to launch a district-wide A through G effort beginning in middle school to support A through G requirements. What will that look like, and how will it be initiated?
Yeah,
Mr. Samuels,
that's a good question. I don't want to put that on Mr. Samuels because I'm not sure, but yes, we will be able to. I think when we talk about some of our communication strategies around the California College Guidance Initiative, CCGI, you'll hear in a moment about how we're trying to increase our communication around some of these approaches, all the way back into middle school as well. So that will come up here in just a moment. And with that, I will hand it off to Mr. Samuels. Okay. While I talked about the grading component and how BTSC is a big part of that, now we're going to talk about that other cause that we identified, which is the effective and consistent implementation of A through G monitoring and follow through. So, Mr. Samuels.
All right. Well, good evening, everyone. Don't feel a lot of pressure right now, but that's okay. I think one thing that's really important when we start talking about monitoring progress for A through G. Traditionally, at the high school level, that's not normally done early on. You know, generally practice is, let's start with our seniors, let's see how many are off track, let's start calling them in and providing some credit recovery opportunities. And so the last few years, we've been working on shifting that. And so schools have been, working with 11th graders, but even 10th graders. And so now we're working to try to provide early intervention for students that are falling behind. And so one of the very first things that we've been working on is trying to find ways to help students recover credits. Because obviously, as we all know, if you don't earn an A, B, or C, then you're not going to meet the A through G requirements. And so when we look at our data and we see that students are not meeting A through G, then we're trying to figure out how can we help them have an opportunity to recover those credits so that they can meet A through G. And so it starts off with credit recovery, which traditionally has been done during the summer. And sometimes, summer is summer, as you know. But we believe that maybe there's some other ways to do that. And so we've been working to try to find ways to build that intervention in during the school day and to give students that opportunity. Using currently the platform Apex, we do have some schools using the platform Ingenuity. Both provide credit recovery opportunities. And it's a complex issue. It's not easy to do. It sounds easy, but if you know a little bit about high school master schedules and trying to find a way to build that into a master schedule with the limitations of our budget, also with some of the requirements, because in order for a class to be A through G compliant, if you will, we have to have a credential teacher in a particular subject area to be that Apex teacher. And so there's a lot of complexity there, but our schools have been working really hard over the last few years to try to do that. And so some schools have had success in that area, and we've been seeing some results. And at the beginning of this year, we also had a few schools that were slightly overstaffed, didn't have enough students, we have more teachers than we needed at some schools. And so rather than take those teachers away, we were able to repurpose those FTE. And so, and our schools were instructed to find ways to provide interventions through Apex for our students, rather than us, repurposing those FTE at another site or even, unfortunately, releasing or what have you. So we were able to do so. And our data has shown us that we've seen some improvement in that area. We do have a long way to go. We have much more work to do in that area, but we are excited about what we're seeing. When you look at the data and you look at our students, especially our African American students who are currently off track, when you look at the number of credits that they needed to recover, because when you're off track, there's a certain number of credits you need to recover in order to get back on track for A through G. When you take that number, it's a wide variety of numbers. Some students need little, some students need a lot. But ultimately, when you look at that and you look at what our credit recovery efforts have done, we've seen a decrease for our Black students that were off track of about 25%. And so we're really excited that we're moving in the right direction. We're starting to see that this intervention is probably something that if we can make this work is going to really have a tremendous impact across our system, and probably is going to serve as one of the most effective ways for us to close the gap to get students back on track. But then once we get them back on track, and even those that are off track, we still have to continue to monitor. And so that's where we have our CCGI, as known as the California Colleges Guidance Initiative, that you all have heard about. And for those who don't know, it's a statewide platform that allows staff, students, and families to have access to career and college planning tools. And it's designed for students from 6th through 12th grade. So we have this opportunity for not just high school students, but also middle school students. And they have real-time visibility into progress towards A through G completion. It's a wonderful tool where just when a family member goes in there, or a student goes in there, or a counselor goes in there, or assistant principal goes in there, they can see visibly where students are as it relates to their progress towards A through G, meeting A through G requirements. And what's interesting to kind of lean in.
Mr. Chairman, you'll show the images.
Oh, you want to see the images?
Yeah, show
Okay,
the images.
I was gonna share that, but I'll bring it up. This is just a freshman one, but I'm gonna get to this in a second because I want to just touch on Mr. Otto's question about middle school, because we do have a plan for middle school. Just to give you a quick overview, we've been piloting this for a little while now, and at the beginning of this year, all of our counselors have received training on CCGI, and our middle school counselors, along with our high school counselors, have made some commitments on how they were going to start a soft implementation. And so in our middle school level, we're utilizing this platform so that students can have an opportunity to set goals. They can explore career opportunities. This platform gives them an opportunity to do career assessments where they can explore careers, and then you match your interests to a career. It does that for them. And then, of course, there's that connection to, okay, if this is the career you want, then this is the major we're thinking about. It has all of those wonderful tools in there, and we want to start that in middle school. But it also provides lessons for students that helps them understand what the A through G requirements are. It helps them understand about colleges that are available. It allows them to use an academic planner so they can even potentially plan out their high school career. And they can actually go into a meeting with a counselor and show the counselor what classes that they would like to take rather than the other way around. So our plan is to provide a tool for middle school, first of all, where we start to educate our middle school students, because that's something that we know that we need to do a better job at. And it's not going to be just get them registered, but we really want to, we're really working on providing specific lessons by grade level that students will experience as they matriculate. And so, for example, 6th grade, there would be a particular lesson. It may start off with, maybe it's the career exploration. But then as they move up towards 8th grade, we might be moving more so into, the academic planner and what they need to do as it relates to A through G and things of that nature. So our team is working on putting together that plan that we're hoping to start in the fall. We have a ways to go, but we believe it's going to happen. And then also, when the students get to high school, what you see here is an example of a high school student's platform when a high school student enters, and this is actually a freshman student. And so this particular screen is showing you the eligibility status of a student if they were going to go to a CSU. So if they wanted to go to CSU Long Beach, it actually has the student's CSU GPA. You see some boxes there that says, the progress has been made towards A through G. And so where you see that one green box I said boxes, those are circles. I used to teach math, believe it or not, but didn't do too well when I taught geometry, I guess. But that green circle that's filled in, this particular student has already satisfied the F requirement. I have to take off the glasses. Oh, okay. Oh, it's bigger. There we go. Okay. So that student has satisfied the F requirement. Thank you. And so what's wonderful is that I may have to go back to 8th grade. So students can see visually, parents can see visually, staff members can see visually that students are already making progress. And what's so fascinating, I just want to take you back to this very quickly. As early as 9th grade, they have like what I'm calling a transcript, but it's basically by A through G area. It has the course, it has the grade, and it tells kids whether or not they have already met it. And so what we're looking at is these are the courses that show that the student has met a portion of the requirement, and then it's going to continue to fill out. So if we were to look at a student like in the 11th grade, as you can see here, and this one is showing the UC GPA, and you see several more of those circles filled out. So this student is already just about there, and we're looking at that B area. And we have, there's probably one more class. And if you look at this section, you see it's now more courses in there, the grades, and even has a section that's not shown here of courses that students have taken that are not A through G compliant as well. So it's a really wonderful tool and this is a tool that not only will our staff use to monitor progress, but also it empowers our students and our families so that they can also monitor progress. And what's so wonderful about that is that we're, as a system, we're working hard to really try to engage with families and students. As you heard our students earlier today, just empowering them. And this was one of those tools that will do so. We talk a lot about having students be advocates for themselves. this is a tool that I believe will help them advocate for themselves whenever necessary, especially as it relates to taking proper courses. And so just to give you a little snapshot there, we'll have more to share on this in the future, especially as we go full implementation in the fall. But at the moment, we do have, at our high school level, we have about 50% of our students currently registered in our system. And so we're working on step one, getting students logged in and registered. This past Tuesday, I think it was Tuesday, it might have been Monday, we just sent out a district school messenger saying, guess what, everyone, we have CCGI. And that one school messenger boosted our registration, not just students, but also parents, by at least, it was at least 1,000 parents, 1,000 students who were added, 800 parents who were added, just in the last, that was yesterday, just one day. Just one day. And so we're really excited because we're working, so the schools are also, obviously trying to get the word out, but then we are supporting it from a district level as well, so that we can really, especially as the school year begins in the fall, really go 100% all in to support our students and to make sure that we're really supporting them to get on track.
Mr. Samuel, since you said you're not feeling any pressure, I can't help myself.
Okay.
I can't. This tool is all fine and dandy. What would be really amazing and empowering is if the local CSU would provide guaranteed admission to any of the students that are tracking their CSU A through G eligibility. I think it's called the Long Beach Promise, right? Where if we're putting all this energy, resources, staffing, thinking, strategic planning into making sure that students are A through G, that they can track their A through G, and yet they don't get guaranteed direct admission to our local CSU. Right? Here's the missed opportunity that this tool so beautifully highlights. Beautifully highlights. And I haven't, I'm not going to let it go, Dr. Baker. You got 2 more months. We have a brand new CSULB president starting on May 1st. 2 months, Dr. Baker. 2 months.
Well, thank you for that. It is worth noting. I think it's also worth noting that years ago we had something called the College Readiness Report, and that was sent out to all of our high school students in the beginning of the school year, at the end of the school year, and it was basically the same type of tool where the students and families could track where they were according to their overall either college or career plan. This is the closest thing, and maybe it's better because the students have the opportunity to take the lead in their own planning and to see their progress throughout the school year and not waiting for a report either in the fall or in the spring. So I would like to congratulate the staff, the staff, everybody who's made this possible. I know we're rolling it out. It makes all kinds of sense that we roll it out to 8th graders because you have to be able to plan ahead. You have to know what you're planning for before you get to high school. So that makes sense to me. I really do want to commend you for this work because for our students to be able to take the lead in their own educational journey is key to their success, as we heard from our empowered students this afternoon. And we want all our students to feel empowered and that they have agency. So thank you for that.
I just want to add that this is actually better. In my excitement, I forgot to mention that also within this platform, it helps families plan for financial aid. It also provides an opportunity for them to apply directly through this system to CSUs or UCs. And so it's amazing. And it's not, I don't think we could take credit for it. It's a state platform, but
say that again, Mr. Samuels, the direct application?
Oh, direct application from within the system to CSU or UC. It's amazing.
What's really exciting now, I'll say this cautiously because there are some CSUs that are not part of this because they're impacted. But they're also, as
Like
many
which
of you,
one? Can you give me an example?
like CSU,
Mr. Moskowitz, yeah.
Fullerton, San Diego State,
How about that,
Cal
the local
Poly, San
one?
Luis Obispo.
Yeah.
But there is direct admission that is also being developed, so that not only will it be an application through this, but that you will immediately be accepted to these schools. Those that are impacted, it's not currently part of that.
If only we had a proposed draft resolution that would engage our local community educational partners. All seriousness, I do have a question. Maybe to the team, but if we're going too deep into the weeds, let me know on it. So understanding and fully affirming that ninth grade is critical. Right, and that our ultimate expectation is that ninth graders are on track and stay on track, but we're not there yet, and so that next grade level is 10th grade, as President Craig had shared. I'm still not sure on. I know that there's multiple causes and very complex. I appreciate all of that, but I'm gonna push a little bit. I'm not clear on, is it more for those students that are not on track that we want to get back on track? Is it our understanding right now with what data we have and what thinking we're doing that those students are not yet able to fully access our credit recovery strategies, or that we're not seeing what we're hoping to see from our credit recovery strategies in terms of that sort of more robust growth for the not on track students?
Mr. Simons, we were just talking about this yesterday. Can you speak to summer school and the number of the spaces that we have available for students versus those that they actually take? Because I think what you're talking about is, do we have the capacity to meet it?
Correct.
And I think, yeah, so if you could share a little bit about what we're looking at with summer school.
Well, one thing that when it comes to summer school, what's interesting is that, so for our office has the responsibility of approving the summer school courses at each of our comprehensives. And one way that we do that, we first start off with some data. And the data that we use is we look at the first semester data, and we look at how many students did not pass, X number of courses. And then we take that number and we pretty much determine how many sections. Definitely not perfect science. However, when we use that number, we're looking at large numbers of sections. And when I say large, I mean at a school, maybe there's 10 sections of algebra that they would need for summer school, which is what we would normally approve, but we would kind of reduce it. And that allows us to cover not only the students who failed at the current semester, but even those who may have failed the previous year. But what we find is that as we get students registered for summer school and summer school begins, we have to actually reduce that number because we don't have enough students who choose to come to summer school. And so that's why we had to say, well, let's try to find another way, because we have this wonderful opportunity during the summer, which for centuries, well, I can't say centuries, for decades, I guess, we've been utilizing. But I get it for kids. I was one of those kids that, I want to have fun during the summer. And so some kids opt out of summer school, even though it's something that they could benefit from. And so we're finding that that's probably one of our challenges, is that some of the options that we've had are not the desired options of some of our kids.
This has been said, but just to amplify, there are cultural aspects, not racial culture, but cultural aspects of intervening for students. It has been shared, summer school, the complexity of during the school year, credit recovery, because you're also taking all of your other courses, and there are habits of waiting, and so this shift to earlier recovery or on-trackness is different. And so there are conditions that have to change with it, that you're not waiting and then taking a full load in summer after your junior year, catching up with a whole year of courses in a way that also doesn't match our expectations for learning. We want students to stay on track. We want them to recover earlier, and we want them to experience good learning, not just passing a class. And so there's multiple dimensions to this and what we're sharing.
And actually, building on that, Dr. Baker. So when Dr. Baker just a little bit ago showed our progress last year on our goal 4, then compared it to our progress on 4B, which is 11th graders, versus 4 is 12th graders, there's a huge number of students between 11th and 12th grade that get back on track. Well, because they want to go to college, they want to graduate, the urgency they're more mature, maybe the urgency kicks in.
Yeah.
So as much as we try to kind of encourage early on trackness, the reality is many of our students, 15, 16, 17-year-olds, maybe it doesn't kick in till later. So we expect to get more of our 9th graders on track so we don't have to deal with this intervention. And the reality is that for young people, sometimes it is the looming deadline that kind of kicks them into gear. So it's both. I mean, we're never going to be able to just solve it with just 9th grade proactiveness. We have to have a good solution for at the end of their career as well.
Yeah. And you bring up a really good point because I had the question, but this goes back to 4A when I was looking at figure 3. And so I know that this question's already come up, but when you look at figure 3, obviously we have a substantial gap between our 9th and 10th grade percentage where it's about 3%, and the 10th grade it's getting closer to 5%, but that 11th grade percentage is just so much more dramatic. Do we have any courses of action that we're taking to support our 11th grade students a little bit more, or do we have an understanding on how students even got to this point? I'm just kind of curious on your thoughts on these 11th grade students in this past semester in particular.
I can share a little, and Mr. Samuels, please feel free to join. This is an 11th grade English. This is about English classes. 11th grade English is where English classes get extremely more rigorous. Most of our students are taking AP courses in 11th grade English. There's AP Seminar, AP Research, AP Language. So it's not just in 9th grade, they're all taking English 1-2. So it's one class. We can really focus our strategies. Let's improve that in one English 1-2 class. By 11th grade, there's 3, 4, 5 different English courses. What am I on the right track with that, Mr. Sham? Yeah. Keep going. 3, okay. Plus, isn't there also a 5-6, or is that, or a 6? 6? Yeah, okay. So part of it is, as a
just
system,
heightened rigor.
As a system, we also have to look at how do we make sure that each of those different courses is the practices are being implemented with fidelity, the QCI practices are being implemented with fidelity, the grading practices are being implemented the way that we want. So it's not just about the class itself, but because of that widening of options that our students take that become much more rigorous, most of them are in the AP courses in English in 11th grade, it just brings in extra layers of challenge that we have to consider. So that would be one thing that, as we discussed recently, we believe that's potentially a reason why you're seeing more variation in the data. If we could, and I know Mr. Otto, you asked a question about the Look For's document, so Dr. Myers-Miller can share a little bit more about that tool that we use.
Mr. Otto and board members, I just want to uplift a little bit around the question, does the walkthrough tool align with teacher syllabi and grading rubric for proficiency and mastery of the standards? So in this particular question, I'd like to break it apart into 2 pieces, if you will allow. When we are talking about an instructional program, specifically courses, the first piece that we are looking at is around your question is the actual walkthrough tool. The walkthrough tool is aligned to the expected quality instructional practices that we expect all teachers to engage in according to the instructional pedagogy that we have been training our teachers on. And in addition to the overall instructional pedagogy, we have content look for tools. And the specific content look-for tools outline the expectations according to what an effective English language arts classroom would look like. So that would be centered around the expectations for teachers and how they deliver instruction around reading and literary analysis, support with writing and evaluating and critiquing. So there are different instructional practices that we would expect to see teachers engaging in and that are uplifted in the content tool. And the way our tools read, they also uplift what and how the student should be responding to the instruction within that. So the content and the look for tools really uplift what we expect effective practices to look like in those classrooms. So whether you are in English 5-6, whether you're in AP, whether you're in Lit, all of the core pedagogical practices should be evident. The content look-for tool does not uplift what are the standards that students should be able to access and are connected to grading. So that's two different things. Please note that the board approved the grading policy that identifies what systematically we expect for the grading to look like across the system. So there's two different things. Does that help to clarify? Okay. Any other questions surrounding that?
Good with that.
So that concludes our answering of questions and reports. There are two together. Item 18.1 is two reports together for monitoring, 18.2, 4A and 4B. And then I can also spend a moment, well, I'll allow you to take action.
Do you want to
on those.
entertain a motion for 4A and 4B, Madam Chair?
Yes.
They're an item together, 18.2.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Yes.
Move to approve monitoring report for interim goal 4A and 4B.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That passes 4-0.
Are we
Yeah.
moving on to?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead,
Yep.
Madam Chair.
So now we're at, we're at 18.4. Is that where we find ourselves? Student outcome focused governance. The board.
Actually, let me pause.
Oh, I'm sorry. 3B. I knew I missed
18.3,
one.
yes, and I'll be very brief because this is how we spent our afternoon talking to students and staff about the interim guardrail. And just a reminder, I forgot to say it earlier this afternoon, but the reason why we paused and did the deep dive that we did this afternoon is it's the first time that we're bringing this guardrail into the board space. So what a wonderful opportunity to hear from staff and students about the plan that is embedded into this report. I do want to clarify, there was a question, a good question, and I did it off the top of my head, but I think, Dr. Benitez, you asked about survey participation. So you will find that on page 177 of the board
This is
materials.
for 3B, right?
This is for 3B, yes. So just across the district, 83% of students in grade 4 through 12, and it actually has the numbers, 34,940 out of 42,167 completed the survey, surpassing the district's 80% participation goal. For us as staff, that's good, and we also monitor the individual school and pathway by school. So we're glad to reach actually a little bit beyond the participation target. If I had to share, our focus is often, and I thought it was interesting that the students voiced it, when you become an 11th grader or a 12th grader, you don't always see the value in taking another survey. So you can imagine where we have less representation in our survey taking is upper grades.
Dr. Baker, just
Yes.
because I think I'm still a little confused, and maybe this is what added to a confusing question
Okay.
for me. I understood that. That's 34,940 students out of 42,167 completed the
Yes.
survey. But then in figure 2, under how many students responded? Both for students of color and white students, when all grades, it's 44,000 plus 5,000, and that's where I was a little bit confused.
Let's see.
Yeah, I do see that.
Yeah, I see that too now, what you're saying,
That's
Dr.
why
Benitez,
I
yeah.
asked the question
Yes,
earlier.
good question. So we'll have to
Because
go
it
back
seems like-
and look
so
at
let me repeat it for Doug
Okay.
here. So Doug, under survey participation on page 177, I did understand that 83% response rate meant that 34,940 students out of 42,167 in those grade levels responded.
Yeah.
But then in figure 2 on the following page, Doug, 178, if you add up the totals for all grades of students of color and
Plus
white
white
students,
students.
it adds to approximately 50,000.
Right, yeah, we'll have
students.
to ask our research team. Thank you for noticing that. And now I see the real question you were asking.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. That's the report on this, so thank you. We'll definitely, and if we need to correct the report, I'll bring it back to you corrected.
Move to accept monitoring report for interim guardrail 3B.
Second?
Any discussion?
Just again, awesome, amazing conversation with students. I think, Dr. Baker, if you could confirm that the reason we held that part of the meeting earlier so that we could accommodate students'
And
schedules
staff,
and
yes.
staff and not keep them here till
Exactly. They
late
were
hours of the
supported, actually, several of them were driven here
Yes.
by staff from their school, so exactly.
So just expressing my
Yeah.
appreciation, gratitude for the amazing student presentations and the staff support.
Yeah, and I'll piggyback on that piece. I think, though, one part of conversation that came up when our meeting with Greg Klein was talking about how we talk about measuring success quantitative quite often. We rarely talk about the qualitative data. And so this was an opportunity to hear some of the great work that's happening at some of our campuses and hear firsthand some of the work that is occurring. And so I just wanted to thank them for all of their great work, and it was great to hear. So,
reaffirmation.
Our
of- yeah.
special presenter here, wearing two hats today. All things considered, it went really well.
So one of the things, Dr. Baker, that I had a moment to check in with school board member Noala was around how students become aware of the RSVP application process. Might not be bad as we're starting, to transition into summer to, maybe highlight or remind students at your school, here's the process, my question was, hey, so what does this application look like? So just kind of on a side note.
Also makes me just want to take a moment and appreciate the many ways that our schools engage students. We have had several years of deep learning and such a centering of students much beyond RSVP. I mean, RSVP has been wonderful, wonderful. You saw the results of it today. And schools have so many different ways. They have done focus groups with their pulse survey data, affinity spaces, talking to Latinx students in a group to hear their perspective, talking to English learners, really listening to Black students, looking at their data. So we heard a representation of that today, but it in no way gives you really the reality of how much work our schools have done to elevate the voice of students in new ways over the last several years.
Okay, so did we have a motion to accept that
in a
one?
second.
And we're at discussion, okay. So any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Our student board member?
Aye.
So that passes 4-0 with a preferential vote. And now we move on to student outcome focused governance, and we have our quarterly board self-evaluation. I believe, Dr. Benitez, you will be leading us in tonight's self-evaluation.
Yes, thank you. And in the spirit of efficiency and maximizing our time and energy on this, and taking the learning from Mr. Miller here, who did the previous quarterly assessment, if I'm happy to transition to someone else doing the next quarterly assessment, but if none of my colleagues is able to, I can volunteer to do this again in a quarter.
I don't think there's an objection to that.
So, having said that, I did meet with.
I was just going to tell you, you haven't even done it yet, and you're already doing a great job.
Well-
So we just don't want to interrupt it. So.
I mean, well, in code, this is so that I don't have to join or volunteer another, committee. All kidding aside, so I did meet with Greg Klein a couple of times to both review our assessment tool, but also the process by which we're utilizing this assessment tool. And he had some tips on how we could both be efficient but expedite our process. So this is what I would propose, and I will use the same process if you all agree. So with Dr. Baker's last board update, there were some instructions that came to us that asked us, let's do this before we come today, so that I could just go through and say, here's where we were last time in January. Is there a difference of opinion? Share with you what I'm putting down as a score, and then if only we don't agree, we would spend some time on that. If we all are in agreement, we'd move on to the very next one. And so both the homework part of it helps this, but also just process-wise, so that we don't have to go through every single one. So if you all are okay with it, that's what I'd like to do tonight. Okay? So let's start off with the first one, under vision, and the first area, I should say, under vision and goals. I scored, or last time we did this, we scored ourselves at 25, meeting student outcomes. The next column over would be mastering student outcomes. I still believe that we have not mastered student outcomes. We're at least one area under on that, so I would still continue to give us a 25 if you all are in agreement with that.
I agree.
I agree.
Okay, so having said that, again, coaching by Klein suggests that, okay, what are we going to do to get that third thing on the next column over? And here's what I propose. The one that we're missing here, we're fulfilling 2 out of 3 true in mastering, is the board used a process that included students, parents, staff, and community members in a way that leads them to be able to express ownership of the adopted goals. We have 2 more community engagement sessions, Mr. Miller's and Ms. Lopez's. My proposal here is that after we finish that 5th one with Ms. Lopez, that we come up with a way for us to measure whether we're able to achieve this or not. So some kind of follow-up with community members on what their understanding and expression of ownership of the adopted goals is. I think finishing our community engagement sessions on board goals and guardrails would allow for us to make a decision on that. If you all are good with that, then I can follow up with Greg and come up with some kind of rubric or measurement or way that we would do that upon the completion of our next 2 community check-in sessions.
Okay, so that's 10 points on, are we at values and guardrails?
No, that's still under the
I'm
first
sorry.
one, Madam Chair. But what I'm saying is, what's the next step?
Right.
Yeah. Yep. Next step for us would be to make to have a discussion on how we would measure whether community has shares ownership in the goals. Okay. So next one is values and guardrails, Madam Chair. We scored ourselves 5 points because we were not yet meeting students' expectations. And the one we were missing under meeting student outcomes was that the board had considered adopting 1 or more theories of action. At our last board meeting, we actually did that. So I'm scoring us a 10 because we've fulfilled the consideration of the theory of action.
Agreed.
Mr. Otto? Ms. Redhead? Okay, so that's a 10. So we moved up there on that one.
5 more points.
Next one is monitoring and accountability. So at our last quarterly assessment, we gave ourselves 20 points for meeting student outcomes. We're still short. We did 2 out of 6 last time. Is there agreement on that? We're still not mastering outcomes focused?
Yes, we still got a lot of work to do to get to mastering.
Mr. Otto? Okay, so I'll follow up at our next quarterly report before that as to what we can do to complete some of those in that column under mastering.
Dr. Benitez, if I may, back
Yes.
just for a moment on values and guardrails. You gave yourself the 10 points. You didn't necessarily look at the mastering, but you actually you have 2 out of the 3 in mastering already done as well. The one that isn't there is the same board using the
above
process
one, right.
to include. So
Right.
if when you do that, you'll actually be able to achieve mastering in both
For
of
both,
the 2.
yeah. Hey, look at that, Brian. You're right there with us. And that's highly possible over the summer, right, if we move forward with the community engagement sessions. Thank you, Mr. Moskowitz. So where are we on communication and collaboration next? So we gave ourselves 1 point. We were 1 out of 4 in terms of meeting student outcomes focus. Is that where everyone still thinks that we're at? 1 point, approaching student outcomes.
Yes, because our meetings last too long.
That's one of them. Yeah. Okay, so we know what we have to do in that next column. That's why I'm trying to go expeditiously here. We've already named, yep, that's right, that's right. Next area is we scored ourselves meeting student outcomes, 4 out of 4, but not yet mastering student outcomes. We had 2 out of 4. If we're all in agreement that we're still at meeting, that's 3 points. Are we in agreement with that? Because I have a couple of thoughts on how we master.
I also had 2 out of 4 for mastering, and so yes.
Ms. Crackhead? Mr. Otto? So for mastering, I have a suggestion that if you're open to it, we could actually do in one of the short-term upcoming meetings. So 3rd row down under mastering, all board members have memorized all of the board's goals and current status of each. Coach Klein suggested a tool where we literally wouldn't have to all, say them, but that we could have like a little pop quiz up here amongst us, and each of us could share a goal and or combine a conversation around that. This isn't about just being able to verbatim repeat the goals here. So that would allow for us to then show that we have quote unquote memorized.
I pledge allegiance to the board goals of the Long Beach Unified School District.
Yeah. No. There's a couple of examples that Grev gave that we could pretty easily in a 10, 15 minute period show that we know what our board goals and guardrails are. That brings us to the last area under continuous improvement.
I'm sorry, how many points did we?
Oh, so we're at 3, because
3?
we're not yet mastering, Madam Chair. Yes, unity and trust, we scored ourselves 3. I think we're still at 3, and you all agreed. Yeah. Okay, so next one, continuous improvement. Last time we rated ourselves at 0 still. One of the things that we're missing to be getting that extra point for approaching student outcomes is the board tracks the estimated annual cost of staff time invested in governance. This is the 2nd row. During its annual self-evaluation. This includes time that any staff member has invested in, et cetera, et cetera. So no pressure, Dr. Baker, but is there a, okay? Yeah. Jill on June 30th could say, here it is. And again, it's 1 point, right, for what it's worth, but that's the one that I think we're hoping to get there by June. So if you all want to do some quick math to help me, We did get some extra points today.
59.
Yep, that's what I have.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would say, yeah. So I'll check in with Greg Klein, and I'll provide an update for you all. But my hope is that we would include next steps in one of Dr. Baker's board reports to us.
And I believe we have to vote
We do.
on accepting that. So,
I'd like to move for approval of the, let me make sure I'm using the right language. I'm sorry.
Quarterly.
The acceptance of the quarterly self-assessment for, what quarter is this? Quarter one?
Yes.
Quarter one.
January to March.
Yeah.
Second.
any discussion? No. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Our student board member?
Aye.
So that passes 4-0 with a preferential vote, and we improved. So thank you, everybody, because that is teamwork.
Yeah, good job, everyone.
Yep. Let's see, and so next on the agenda is 18.5, Student Outcome Focused Governance Implementation Timeline. Vice President Miller, do we have anything to report? Yes.
Yes, I do, in regards to at least my role. Hold on, I'm pulling up my notes right now. Give me a second here. I apologize. Well, first, one of the things that I didn't report on, but I just wanted to make sure was clear, in regards to the effective monitoring of our questions for each one of our reports. We were at effective at 77%, was able to score at least one of our board meetings. Unfortunately, I didn't score all of our board meetings, but with me being in this role, moving into the next quarter, I'll be sure to make sure that I do a better job at recording the future meetings. And I just appreciate the grace that you all have given me while I was out during my small ailment here. So I appreciate that. I'm sorry. Yes, my community engagement session. I'm sorry, I had a bit of a blank there. So my community engagement session is, unfortunately, the date has slightly changed. It'll still be in May. It'll still be involving a number of great partners like the Six, and we're looking forward to having the African American Cultural Center. We're looking forward to having partners like the NAACP, as I work to have a targeted approach towards our African American community, as we want to make sure that we have representation of all of our communities. And so the date has moved, like I said, slightly, and it's going to be on May 26th. And so it will be at the Mary Butler campus. Looking forward to having a packed house as I continue to engage our campuses in my district in particular. I'm going to also send a request to community members that are interested and are invested in the community outreach efforts of the Long Beach Unified School District. This is an opportunity for you to also get involved. So as we appreciate the questions, concerns about our community outreach, with 45 days or less than 45 days before the event, I'm going to ask for your support in regards to getting the word out to make sure that we have a robust event, and that'll be it for my report.
Great. And what day of the week is May 26th?
Tuesday.
It's a Tuesday. And who will be partnering with you on that one?
That is a great question. Because unfortunately, we did have a quick date change. I mean, this has happened in the past couple of days here. So the person who was scheduled to be my partner in this needs to check his sitter schedule. And so we'll give him a couple more days here, and then if he's able to change some things around, then I will announce who that person is.
And just for the record, I don't have a sitter. I've never used the sitter before, so it's more about working around previously scheduled things because the date changed.
But once again, I won't announce who that person is. I'm just going to keep it.
We'll never know. And that brings us to item 18.6, Review Board Policy 7310, Naming of Schools. I'll just kind of preface this by saying what we're doing tonight is considering reconstituting the committee. And one of the reasons for that is because it's been 10 years since we've had this committee in place. And so that's the discussion we're going to be having tonight. And I think, Dr. Baker, you have something else to help us with
I'm
that.
just going to share a little bit that has mostly been included in the background to this item. And let me start with the recommendation first, a little bit different than starting with the context. So the recommendation that I'm making is that the Board of Education should review and discuss Board Policy 7310, which is also included with the materials, and provide direction to staff regarding policy updates, committee reconstitution, and potential next steps in the school naming process. And so I did want to just take a moment or two to wind us back to 2015. I was tasked at that time as Deputy Superintendent of leading the School Naming Advisory Committee, and at the time it was the first of its kind. It was an opportunity to, as has been done in other settings, really bring a community group together that included, and you can see 22 different community and district stakeholders were brought together to think about not just a policy recommendation, looking at policies from different districts, looking at the California School Boards Association policy, but beyond that, to help create processes that would go with the acceptance of suggested names and then criteria, and you now see that represented in the policy document. It also seems important that this is a moment, and we actually heard a public speaker tonight speak to a particular school's name. This is a moment thinking about several years of our community, our staff coming forward, both in the boardroom and outside of the boardroom. Following the murder of George Floyd, we had staff that came to us and said, you know, we have a lot of schools that represent racist people. Following your approval of the Excellence and Equity Policy, we had a wonderfully spoken teacher who did his research and worked with Dr. Brown around actually analysis of the names of our schools. We also have schools, as was represented tonight, that no longer represent our core values. We have schools that have been closed in Hudson, and we'll see the end of Hoover's time as a middle school, and then a move coming for the Keller Middle School to move to the Hoover campus. All of this necessitates looking at school names and the policy itself. To be specific, a name like Helen Keller represents one of our only schools, if not the only, and I'm doing it from memory in this one, the only school named for a woman with a disability. And so just to assume that we want the new Keller Middle School in its flagship nature of representing a dual language program for our district, potentially to have a name that represents that doesn't necessarily mean that Helen Keller should not be the name of a school in our district. And so with all of that complexity and the tremendous harm, addressing harm, as we heard a community member speak to tonight, and the complexity, these are important decisions. They require, just like the summer of 2020, when you could have acted swiftly to do a resolution, and you didn't. At that time, you directed staff to very intentionally think about the aspiration of excellence and equity in this district. And with the time that was taken, I'm not saying the time needs to be equal, but with the intentionality, the calling in of community, we saw the tremendous result of that and what that led to towards Vision 2035 and what are our goals now. So with all of that in mind, I just want to respect those who have written, those who have spoken over several years' time, not just tonight, but thank you to the speaker tonight as well. To others who have considered what our school names mean to them when they walk into a building every day and experience what our staff and our students and our families experience. So it is with that in mind that I make the recommendation, and I'll open it back up to you all for conversation.
So what we need to do tonight as a board is to have a consensus in directing, directing our superintendent to reconstitute a committee, and then we can move forward. And the committee will bring recommendations to us about the policy. So in the meantime, if we have ideas about the policy itself, we can submit those to the committee so that the recommendations coming from the committee can reflect our thoughts as well. So I don't think we need a vote on that because it's an information, right? It's not an action item, it's just an information item. So I will look to my colleagues to see if we're in agreement. That we
not vote on it?
No, we're not voting. We're just directing the superintendent to reconstitute that committee. Yes.
Were you going to say something, Doug?
I think we should have a discussion about this before, I mean, not right now. I think there's material out there. Not only should we not vote on this right now, I don't even think we should discuss this right now. What we should do is gather information from which to have a discussion. Otherwise, it's just kind of this is what I'm thinking right now, and there's a lot of stuff out there, and there's a lot at stake with these decisions in this community, and so it needs to be very thoughtful, and I would hope that the staff could come up with information, what goes on in other places, how they've approached it, not just the California School Board Association, but there's probably been some pretty rich thinking that's gone on between 2015 and now. To bring it in, to then have a discussion, and we might not even vote on it then. What we would do is we would take this seriously and try and find the best thing to do.
Well, the only decision we're making tonight
Yes?
is that we direct our superintendent to reconstitute a committee. So we're not making a decision on the policy. We're not wordsmithing the policy. We're not making a decision on anything else except that the committee would be reconstituted so that we can move forward.
I mean, I think that may be a bridge too far, too. I think I would rather have the board think about all this without having a committee that we're already appointed.
But by policy, we already have that, Doug. So unless we're going to revoke the policy that we already have. So can I add a layer,
Sure.
Doug? So I'm not going to get into my thoughts about the policy because I think we have a policy and we have a process for revising policies if necessary. But I will say this, if part of our process as dictated by policy is that we constitute a committee, I'm in favor of that. With two very important considerations. That I do have some thoughts on being more inclusive in who we want to constitute this committee. As you pointed, Dr. Baker, this is 10 years ago. So if we're gonna have a conversation about that, I have some ideas. Irrespective of where we land with at least some parameters around constituting this committee. I do feel a sense of weight identifying with a community that is hurting right now because of the name of that elementary school on 3rd. And I do also feel, because of all the things that you've shared, Doug, a sense of urgency, understanding that a process of constituting a committee, a process of reviewing a policy, a process of making recommendations, will take months at best. So I do want a special consideration to be made or considered by this board, that not only did we hear from public comment today, I've received many emails. We've received many emails. We have students and families at that elementary school, the Sea Lions, that don't know what they're going to do. And I'm going to keep it real practical. This year is going to end. Academic year is going to end. This school has swag and events and merchandise and materials, a PTO at this school. And I feel an obligation and a sense of urgency and responsibility, quite frankly, to the members of the community of that school, to the members in my area, that we do some special consideration for that school. Because I worry that then months go by, and I'm all for process, right? But this is different, right? This is different, this is recent, and we have families and students that don't even have guidance right now. We've provided spaces, we've provided support. Props to the facilities team for going out there and removing murals. Thank you to the executive staff for being quick. But the naming of a school, for all the reasons that you said, it's important, right? Process is important. I think that school in particular, given the recent circumstances, have created a very traumatic condition. I mean, I teach Chicanx and Latinx studies as my day job. We've heard from community. I'm consistently hearing from community. Let's move forward on constituting. I have ideas with that. But a special consideration, I'm asking for a special consideration that through that process, we either prioritize or first in the queue or something for that elementary school on 3rd.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was operating from the last paragraph of the memo that we got that said, accordingly, the board should review board policy 7310 and consider reconstituting a school naming advisory committee in accordance with board policy and review and update the list of recommended schools and facilities names approved in 2016 for future board consideration. I agree with all that. I mean, I think that's what we should do. You know, we can't do it tonight, but we should do it expeditiously. And if we want to do a carve out for that school on 3rd Street because of the exigent circumstances, I have no problem with that.
And the first step in addressing the policy and addressing that list of names is having the committee reconstituted. That's the first step. So it sounds like we all want the same thing. And then what you were mentioning about this list of possible committee members, I think we should talk about that tonight, because we are directing our superintendent to develop a committee. So we need to let her know who we want represented on that committee.
Right. Yeah, so, so my comments were, first off, I'm glad that we're all in agreement that we need to have a heightened sense of urgency around changing at least one school name, if not multiple. But the piece that I wanted to make sure was clear is that even with this policy, from an operations standpoint, I guess we just missed it. I was surprised that we didn't have like hard numbers attached to like how many committee members, so on and so forth. Not like like it's a necessity, but I mean, I know we're going to have that discussion now, but I think that in the future, like having some of the more firm numbers is important.
The committee, I mean, I can do it from memory, it was about 45 members.
Okay.
With half of them, there is an account here for at least
Right.
half of them to be members of the community-based organizations.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So the only thing I would add is, again, just more inclusive language. I think by the very language in here, it could be interpreted that, for instance, there wouldn't be a member from one of our, it says LBUSD parent, from an LBUSD parent forum.
It's very 2015.
Right.
The language that's
So
here,
we have, DLACs and CACs and PTOs, and I would want to be more inclusive to make sure that we have representation from the current groups in our district that represent the diversity and the richness of our district. So, Mr. Reel, because this is written into the previous policy and we're not making policy suggestions or revisions right now, what say you in us being able to constitute a committee, but that we broaden it so that we reflect our values around inclusiveness?
Go ahead. I think, looking at the language, it says at least half of board members from the community, at least one representative, at least. So that, to me, means it's not an exclusive list, not an exclusive list of representation.
Can we then articulate what we mean by an LBUSD parent forum?
Yeah, yes.
Because there was such a thing as a parent forum back in the day, and I'm assuming that that's what that was, and that's not how I'm interpreting it today.
You have already stated the existing parent groups. We would, of course, include Sankofa Parent Village, like we would go through our roster of internal parent groups.
We have a whole context for how we engage community that, in my view, begins with the Guiding Coalition, who really led us into Vision 2035. That group is inclusive of our community partners, families, student voice. So not to say exclusively, this group should be constituted by the group that was Guiding Coalition. But we have this rich base of where to start, and engagement only gets better when we continue to activate and engage in relationship, which is what we really want. So we could work from that Guiding Coalition and bring back a consideration for you to then add, change, modify, and adjust. It might be an efficient way to think forward.
And it definitely it is more than what is here. So it will meet all of these requirements and more.
That's
So then, are we good with that direction for our superintendent?
Yes, and just to be explicit, again, the consideration I'm asking for is for a unique carve-out for that elementary school on Third, right? So if we're sensing and seeing that there are going to be, for instance, as an example, multiple recommendations or considerations for revising policy, that's going to hold us up, and I worry that then the summer passes and we start a new academic year with the elementary school on Third. So that if it's possible, and when you bring back that recommendation, to also have some unique language for that elementary school on Third, then I'm good with moving forward.
May I speak freely? Yes, and we have schools where staff won't wear the school name on their chest because they don't support the values of the people that our schools are named after. And so while there's definite urgency around and a community expressed feeling around the name of Cesar Chavez, I have a sense that we have similar sentiment in other parts of our community that haven't come forward in the same way. And that's something that we heard going back a couple of years when Mr. Waddles from Stanford, our amazing human being and teacher, came forward and spoke about 41 names of schools. And so I hear what you're saying. We want to honor what you're asking for. I also want to suggest that possibly the work of the committee is to prioritize some of the needs based on some of the other sentiments that maybe our communities are feeling, but are not coming forth with in the same way because there hasn't been a current sharing in the news of harm done. So I respectfully want to, I push back a little on the urgency and say, yes, that's urgent, and other places feel urgent too, and they're not speaking about it.
Point well received and taken in the spirit that was delivered. here's what I would add, not in pushing back here. One of the things I remember expressing when we last had a conversation relating to names in Mr. Waddle's presentation, and I remember when I said it, was because we had a preemptive group of parents and community members from Wilson, when we hadn't even started a process or considered a name change, come and start sharing about why we shouldn't change the name of Wilson. And at the time, what I expressed, and I'll share it again today, is to me, the names of schools is important. It's important. But as important, or to me, even more important, because we can change the name of a school, right? Our actions, policies, programming, initiatives, whether it's organizing something around not wearing gear. So what I meant by a special consideration, I'm calling it a carve out or whatever, was not necessarily in saying Chavez is more important or this community is more urgent, but that whatever came forward would come with the spirit of, I think we can still do stuff at Chavez Elementary School in solidarity with the community, the students, the staff, the families there as a district that uplifts those values that you just shared, Dr. Brown. So I don't think it's an either or. I think it's a both here. And look, if that committee, because that committee could very well say, we're not going to change the name of X, Y, and Z, and we, as inclusive as we want to be. As important to me, and I'll say it from a statewide perspective, so that the lens isn't just on one school in our district. Great to start changing names of monuments and streets. How about the farm workers that are still out there right now? How about some lessons, some curriculum, right, on the contributions of women in that struggle? So that's where I'm coming from it, Dr. Brown.
Okay, so
one point of clarification, just on the policy, it is an advisory committee. It is the board that has the responsibility and does any kind of name changing and makes final decisions.
Right.
Whoops, I missed that.
Oh, the board has the final say. So committee can bring recommendations forward, but the board has the final say. So our directions for the superintendent go as follows. So we are directing our superintendent to reconstitute the naming and renaming committee with two considerations. One, that the new iteration of the committee better represents the diversity of the district, and then two, that we prioritize one school, understanding that there's an immediate need for the elementary school on 3rd Street. Are we good with that then? Wait. Okay, all right, then thank you, everybody. And now we're at board member reports, and Vice President Miller, we will start with you.
All right. Well, first off, I just want to thank everybody for their well wishes and their prayers as I was out for a couple of weeks. All things considered, I'm doing okay, and so thanks again. There are 2 events I just wanted to put on people's radars. Well, one is more of a thank you, one is an actual event. During the break, there were a number of campuses that were closed. A lot of folks went on vacations, while I was out on a field trip with a cohort of 40 LBUSD students visiting our facilities team and visiting a couple of projects that were under construction. And so that was all hosted by David's team, and Ferdos was a huge help. And so I just wanted to thank them and give them a really big kudos. You guys know I can be an architecture nerd, and so I nerded out at taking a look at the work that's happening at Poly, and was just really proud of the work that's happening over at Jordan. And it was cool teaching the kids about the opportunities in the trades to be on some of those projects. And so to create those experiential learning opportunities for our kids are important to me. And so for the Long Beach Unified School District to open up its doors to make that happen for them, I think was a big day for them. And I just wanted to thank everybody who was involved. The second event, kind of in that same breath, that I'll be partnering with the Long Beach Unified School District on is Women in STEM Signing Day. And so in partnership with LBCC, Cal State Long Beach, some multiple aerospace companies, and Demo Chicks, there will be an event celebrating our young women in the Long Beach Unified School District in the 8th grade that are going into a STEM pathway. So they'll get a cool signing day for them STEM pathway. And they'll also be celebrating our female 12th grade students who are going on to STEM careers post-graduation. And so it's just going to be a really cool opportunity to celebrate these young women. That will be on May 30th at LBCC. Yep. And so I'm looking forward to it. Should be a whole lot of fun. That's the end of my report.
Thank you. Dr. Benitez.
Yeah, a few items for me, Madam Chair, and my timing is off here because of spring break. Did our EL symposium occur after our, okay, so just a big expression of gratitude to everyone that helped put our EL symposium together, particularly Dr. Myers-Miller there and the whole team.
I will definitely not take credit. I will definitely uplift my team, which is Catherine Perez and Trace Roth, who were monumental in making sure that it took place.
Yeah. And to thank you again to everyone that helped put it together. But also I want to uplift all the DLAC and ELAC members that were there, community organizations that were there, and you know, all the students, parents, caregivers that led to a wonderful event, hopefully a standing event for our future. So it was great morning, and I mean, that mariachi I could still hear kicking off that morning. We also had, and again, my timing is off, I was able to participate along with President Craighead at the last CAC meeting, which I felt was one of the most impactful meetings that I've attended for CAC around student-led IEPs. So just great work that's going on in the CAC space with our SPED team, with the parents, being very vulnerable and courageous, and with a student there in particular that showed so much courage that allowed for his parents to not use is the wrong word, but to reference him as an example, an illustrative example of the possibilities. So I wanted to make sure to give props to all the members of CAC that are advancing our work with students with disabilities. I had an opportunity Thursday afternoon before spring break to visit Stevenson for their reading and literacy event. How cool is this, y'all? Late afternoon on Thursday, everyone wants to go home for spring break, and we have about 90 students hanging out at Stevenson with members of the Stevenson school staff, PTO, parents, just hosting a wonderful literacy event. They had to push back their Reading Across America event because of weather. But I had a wonderful time there reading to all grade levels, and then there's an after-school program there as well as Stevenson, and all those kids and their families came out. So it was a beautiful day, because usually when I've attended these events, it's in classrooms. There are some parents and community members there, but in this case, it was after school. So we had a lot of parents, community members, caregivers there along with the students. So wonderful work going on by PTO and by new principal, Sharita, is there at Stevenson. So big ups to the entire team and to all the community organizations and staff that were there providing resources and information and support to the students and parents. And then lastly, I also attended DLAC, last DLAC meeting, had a good conversation with Dr. Myers-Miller about just where information can be found regarding the important work that's done there. Cool presentation that was given as well. And I want to congratulate the new leadership team on DLAC who were formally announced that day. So again, going from the EL symposium to that DLAC meeting, there's just good vibe going on right now with our work with multilingual learners. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Otto?
No report tonight.
Okay. Well, I want to thank all the teachers and staff that conducted open house for our high schools. I was able to attend Lakewood High School and had an opportunity to speak with a HOSA team, and that's the health, anyhow. I remember the OSA, but it's the health, yeah, the health pathway. And I met with a team of young women who compete. And last year in Las Vegas, they competed, and it was a national competition. They competed using the anatomage table, and if you've never had an opportunity to see these things, they're amazing. And they have another competition this year, and I haven't heard how they did, but very exciting to meet these incredibly smart young women. And let's see, then also they had an art gallery in the cafeteria. They had pottery and other types of art, you know, in the visual mediums or whatever. They had some pottery for sale, kind of the pottery that the kids didn't want to bring home. And I thought it was great. I picked up a couple of things, and I paid for them. I just want to make that clear. And then at McBride, you know, it's hard to go from school to school because of parking and everything else, but I wanted to make it over to McBride because we have our student board member here that's from McBride, and so I wanted to make that effort. It was very exciting to see, you know, the celebration that they had at McBride, and they combined their event with a movie night, and they had hot dogs and popcorn. And McBride is unique in that there's a very large green space in front of the school, and so it feels more community minded with, you know, the neighbors all being invited. And it was really great to see our student board member at work, because she was handling so many different aspects of the event that night, and she's capable of doing anything, in case you haven't noticed by now. And then a shout out to Dr. Raul, who was handling the tech for the movie night. He's doing a great job there. And then Twain, which is an elementary school, also had an open house, and Mrs. English's second grade class had baby chicks. So let me tell you, that second grade class was attracting a lot of people, and they're so soft and adorable. And then a shout out to Mrs. Goodwin. She's married to my older son's friend from elementary school. This is one of the things I like about Long Beach. You always run into somebody that either you know or your kids know, or they literally, I don't know, it's just Long Beach is so wonderful. And then, of course, the English language symposium. It was such a celebration that day, such a great celebration, and it was wonderful to see members of our Cambodian community, members of our, you know, Spanish-speaking community. There was mariachis, ballet folklorico, the music, just to have a Saturday morning started with mariachi music like that, incredible. It was a wonderful celebration, and then the keynote speaker was just fabulous. So thank you, everyone. That must have been a huge effort, because there was, you could tell so much work that had to go into that. So thank you, everyone, and well done. And I'll hand it over to our superintendent.
So I have no report tonight, and we'll end it on that wonderful note. Thank you.
Well, thank you. If there's no objection, we'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everyone. Our next I'm sorry, what? Oh, we have to sign papers. I'm almost done. And our next regularly scheduled meeting is May 6th. Thank you, everyone, and good night.